There it goes. Okay, preview. Alright. Go live. And... Alright. Hello everybody. It's Cobalt. And we've got Walt here, who needs no introduction.
What's going on?
And pretty soon we will have Allan Powell on here as well. He's on his way home right now, so if Walt wants to, he can start with whatever topic he wants.
Oh man, there's so much to discuss. There's so much to discuss with the Allan and my back and forth so far. So I think I should start with. It was difficult for me yesterday because I was laughing so much. And so I had to actually go back and play the debate because I was like, oh my gosh, like there's this call out, it's actually happening. And so I was laughing. I was just like entertained by it so much. I had to actually go back and like watch and listen to the points. And to give Allan credit, hi Allan, to give Allan credit, I think there's some things where he was a little bit more right about my positions than you might have been. In fairness. So I figured, I try to give the devil their due. Even if it's an argument I disagree with, not that Allan is the devil, but I do try to give the devil their due. So
I'm the devil.
Yeah. So I figured it's a good chance for like if anyone has a direct question on any of my positions or any direct criticism, it's just a good chance to go ahead and air that, and then I can kind of just explain where I'm coming from with that sentiment. And if I'm wrong, then and I think that I'm wrong after the conversation, I have no problem changing my mind on issues. That's fine. Like I made a video about how I'm wrong in learning. I try to do that. And a lot of the comments I do actually take and I do find influential. They do inform me on like how people are responding to the content. And ultimately my mission on YouTube, if I had to say like my objective, is to have people...
You all right, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You good? Yeah, my objective is to have that conversation. And my objective is to hit people with things that they might not have been hit with before all the time. But sometimes I do just talk about things from my perspective, and sometimes my perspective is not super unique. Sometimes it's shared by a lot of people. And I'm not trying to be how would I put it? I'm not trying to just like pander to a niche. I am trying to come at things authentically. When I found out that my beliefs were kind of aligned with a group, roughly, and there were some things with that group that I didn't like and some things with that group that I really did like, I figured that I would start kind of messaging that liberal gun owner more. I figured I would start messaging people who were more maybe moderate on that political compass in different ways, and just try to get arguments out from within their worldview and within their lens. So that kind of colors a lot of the content that I do. Arguing from my lens is fun and easy, but also sometimes it's nice to take someone else's lens and use their language and use their world. So I kind of do a mix of both. But hello, Allan. It's nice to talk to you.
How's it going?
It's going, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I missed the intro. That was rushing.
Oh, we just got started because we had a few people waiting in the chat. So we were like, yeah, we'll talk and
try to fill in.
Just wait. I don't think you missed too much, though. I think we were just kind of bullshitting for a little bit.
Yeah, I saw your text that you were on your way, so I was like, he'll be here soon enough.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to get like hurt driving home or something just to make my chat. It ain't worth it.
Oh no, I'm a phenomenal driver. I know how to drive California way.
I don't know how that compares to Texas way.
California,
it's pretty much 20 miles above whatever the limit is, and as long as you use your signals and don't actually like put anyone in danger, you're good to go.
Okay, so basically it's kind of like Texas driving, just a little less competitive.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, and also, I was going to say SoCal drivers are, and NorCal drivers only like the Bay Area, but like SoCal, if you drive in SoCal and if you live in the Bay Area, you're probably one of the best drivers in the nation, like comparable to like New York for your ability to park and navigate heavy traffic in streets. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So props to the
situational awareness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well,
I deliberately avoid that stuff, but yeah.
In the entrances to Texas, where it says "Welcome to Texas" and all that, it says "Drive safe" or "Drive friendly" the Texas way. That's a fucking lie. That is a goddamn lie. you drive to get where you're going, and other people may or may not make it either. So, all right. Well, I know you might have had a little bit of issue with how I portrayed your channel in my chat. To be honest, I kind of just see you as a person who gives their opinion, but they do it in a logical manner. And going back to what you said about how it's your views and not necessarily, a spin on it or anything is kind of what I was trying to get at in my chat. So,
yeah, I or Walt.
Oh, I think that was at me. But yeah, to that point, I do want to clear the air. If I've said something on my channel and if I've recanted it ever, and there's been times where I've pinned comments with corrections and things like that, if I ever flip on something or if I offer clarification, there's either one of two things going on. One, I realized my presentation was really, really sloppy on an issue. Or two, I realized later through more research or studying more that there's more I could have gotten out. And one of the things that is just like a big problem for me, and this is just me being transparent, is that we have like a YouTube news cycle, right? Where an article gets dropped online and you have a race to cover it with your opinion. I try not to consider myself a news channel. I really don't. However, people do look for breaking news and people are looking for like, what are people saying about that? And so that's one of those things where I've been trying to balance the headline rush because I'm not a news guy. I'm an opinion guy. And that's how I want people to treat me. I don't want people to treat me like I am reporting the news. That's just kind of an unfortunate byproduct of how things go. But, there's times where you go and you reach out. And I think probably the biggest example of a mistake on my part would have been pistol braces. So I have no problem saying that. It's probably the biggest mistake. Yeah, so I made a clarification after the fact, going in and clarifying what I meant, and then also clarifying further that position. So there's examples where I'll go back in time. And I'm like, yeah, if I made a mistake, that's cool. Like, we'll fix it, But yeah.
Allan, you got anything?
Is Allan there?
Hello?
Allan, I think you might be DC'd. You might need to disconnect, reconnect. Because we can't hear you if you're talking. Oh, there we go. I'm hearing something. Discord's going off.
I'm glitching out. I'm getting a lot of audio boxy. Okay.
Is it better now?
It may or may not be.
Are you on Wi-Fi, dude?
I'm on Wi-Fi, but I'm also like, my webcam's looking crazy right now. Let me try this. Does that work? Is your connection any better with that? Is that a little less data?
Yeah, let me try that on my end too.
We'll get this figured out. If you're in the chat, hey, we love you.
Yeah, please give us feedback. Here, let me.
If you guys have questions in the chat, I guess throw them down. If you got.
Hey, we got 7 viewers. There you go.
Yeah.
6 viewers.
Something like that. It'll bounce around.
Yeah. Allan's your thing getting any better? We're off to a great start.
Yeah. It'll work out.
Oh yeah.
See AGK in the chat. What's up, man?
All right, so Allan Powell's in the chat now.
You're saying audio's glitching out.
And I think I'm in here too.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. Sounds a little better. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I just reconnected like you just did.
Okay. You're a little choppy, but I think it's serviceable.
Yeah.
I think it'll work.
So did I miss anything?
So not too much. I was just kind of explaining, like, I try not to pretend like I'm above making mistakes, right? So like one example I gave was pistol braces, where I think my initial coverage was unclear, and I think that it wasn't sufficiently segmented from the narrative, if you will, of what was going around, which was misleading, I think. Which is why I did a correction later on it. So like there's things where I see like, oh, hey, you know, my coverage here wasn't good, or there's like this one line item in a video. My modus operandi for this has been leave up the video where I make the embarrassing mistake, pin a comment where I made the super embarrassing mistake, make a correction video if it's necessary. So for pistol braces, I did. Because, hey, make sure that your perspectives here, are there things where the ATF's guidance has been unclear in the past? Sure. Where it's not consolidated in one place and it's confusing? Yes, but also keep in mind, you know, in this case, it's not changing guidance and fighting this. Ultimately, all it did was keep that guidance from being codified for the public. It's not going to change an internal operation. So, like, keep in mind that, yeah, we can criticize the guidance. We should criticize the guidance because it's stupid. But we should also keep in mind that this didn't change a single regulation, right? So, like, that wound up being like my intake after I processed the situation entirely, and after I thought about how I phrased it initially and how I did a sloppy job. So in that case, I'm like, yeah, you know, like, I don't have a problem going back and making corrections. Like, I think that's a good thing to do. So, but I also think that, like, leaving my mistakes out in the open for people to throw stones at is good too, because then they can see, one, my growth, and two, my position that, hey, look, like, I'm not beyond criticism. So that's kind of why I do that.
It was nice to see that you know, made the additional video and clarified, you know, things that weren't really talked about on other people's channels as well.
Yeah, and I think, like, to the point, like, as far as the, let's say, like, the elephant in the room, I think is probably something around the lines of, like, not that I don't think that your position is that I'm some closeted Marxist, and I don't think that your position is that I'm necessarily ingenuine. Like, I don't think that you think that about me. I think that you think I have a paradoxical position, and that forces me to use language that co-ops a narrative that is troubling to you because you've seen the ramifications of that. But I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That's actually pretty well put. Yeah.
Okay.
It's that, you know, by having to use those words, you know, you are on some levels feeding into that entire game that, you know, they play. And of course it sucks because you have to do that. Like, that's the thing with, like, the Candace Owens and the, not to compare you to them, of course, but Brandon Tavis, but they use their blackness to say, you know, I can use my blackness to appeal to other black people. So, you know, I can see someone on the liberal side saying, I want to do this to, you know, because I've already got my foot in the door with these people. It's better than someone that, you know, they completely hate trying to tell them the exact same thing, because they're not going to listen.
Yeah, and I get that, because there are things where, like, let's say we talk about high capacity magazines, right? So just on the gun control issue, right? Oh, sweet, we got video. All right. But yeah, so as far as the, I'll try mine and hopefully we won't crash. Hello. But yeah, as far as, like, the gun control issue, if we talk, like, high cap magazines, right? Like, as an example of that language, you know, you and I both know, Cobalt knows, those are standard capacity magazines. There's nothing abnormal at all about a 30 round mag, right? And so that's not really
absolutely. You know, you got to use that term to.
Yeah, so, like, when I use that term, I try to. Oh, hold on. I think we're lagging out now. Hold on.
I think the videos might be too much.
I'm going to try to do that. Maybe it'll be smoother. Okay. We can do Allan's video. I think we might be able to get away with one person's video.
Yeah. You know, I'm pretty sure people aren't here to see our faces. But it's more about the ideas being discussed. But I think it is good to like give clarification on like legal definitions and exactly that, but it's also good to separate, but like say that these aren't actually high capacity mags. As long as you're clarifying that to the people, so they're kind of getting a little extra bit of information to break that psychology, then it's all good.
Yeah, so I think probably then, if I'm trying to think about what you would throw stones at or what you've thrown stones at before. So that's where I'm trying to like think. So like probably the 1776 videos are probably the most recent. Do we want to get into that? Do you want to lead with your stance on that?
Well, of course, there's the initial free speech stance, so they should be able to say it. But
sure.
I think that it's kind of like a calling card of the rising level of distrust of government and patriotism and stuff that we would need if we want to actually regain liberty. And that's not to condone the people that are going over crazy and like I said, the horseshoe effect in the other video, where both sides could really ruin it for everyone.
The issue there is we really don't have the popular support for that. Kind of
it's well, they say that it was only like 3% of the what was it, the British that actually fought in the American Revolution, and the rest were pretty much loyalists or too scared to get involved.
Yes, but you also understand that we weren't doing very well in that revolution until the French got involved. That's why we wanted the French to get involved, so they could send over their military advisors to, first of all, whip our troops into shape and stop the desertions, and for their big fuck-off navy to help fight the Britishes.
That might be a red herring, though. Like, to Allan's point, it's not like... So to Allan's point, first on the free speech note, I'm not saying that you don't have the right to say 1776, and I would never argue that, and I'm pretty much a free speech absolutist as far as I know. I think that regulating speech the same way that we would regulate any other right, which is your hands off if you do something harmful to someone that doesn't fall in what is your right to do. So, for instance, like libel or threats, things like that, there's a reason that those aren't protected by free speech, right? Because they're not a free speech right. I don't see that as an infringement on free speech because I see those as outside of the right. Obviously, if it's your choice to say 1776, my point with the video and when I made the clarification was more so, let's invoke fighting language when it's time to actually fight. So my question, I guess, would be, do you think that that's where we're at? Do you think that we're at a point where armed revolution or like a militant revolution is the only way out now and it's just inevitable, like it's just going to happen? Like, where are you at?
Yeah, from what I've seen, there have been so many efforts to just try and get them to like stop doing, tyrannical shit, and it seems they just double down every time. I don't see a lot of examples where people, do supposedly the right thing and call their congressmen, etc., and that actually makes a change up to the highest level.
I think that's a problem too, by the way. So like, I think that like the voter engagement aspect of things, where we get people thinking about candidates and thinking about contacting their reps and thinking about staying involved in the process. I think if we could do that, that would be fantastic. And I think that is one of the big problems we face. That's something that I'm researching now. I haven't made too much on that because it's not an issue that I'm too up on like specifically why is this voter disengaged. I get why people are engaged on the left and I get why people are engaged on the right. What I'm trying to figure out is why that quote unquote middle American voter can be so out of touch with their leadership. And we shouldn't even be seeing them as their leadership. This is one of those problems. We should be seeing them as representatives that we hire. They're on our damn payroll, right? They should be doing what we want, And I disagree. I don't think that we're at a revolution point yet. I think that a revolution point is going to be one where basically there's no further communicative recourse for us. So like the courts have failed. You're talking like kangaroo courts. You're talking like puppet democracies, like what you'd see in Venezuela, that type of thing for your elections, where it it doesn't matter, or Russia, where your elections don't matter, right?
That's
Those types of
sounding
things.
a lot like the past 6 months.
Yeah, see, and I disagree on a substantive amount of the voter fraud claims. So
before we get in too far to that, I do want to lend my I guess support to Allan's ideal of basically shit's not going the way it should, and our voices are being drowned out. I don't agree with him on the voter fraud thing either, but I will say in the cases of, for example, the Supreme Court actively ignoring 2A cases.
Yeah. That was when sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we're not at the Venezuela level yet, I don't believe, but it's the steps that it takes to get there, and it's when the court is actively acting against the constitution of the state, and as state as in country, that they're supposed to be representing, then what goes from there? Then we don't represent the people either, right? So I can understand the frustration. I mean, and while you understand the frustration too, I know you do, especially being in California. But but I mean, at least the was it the Ninth Circuit? At least they're trying to actually do their damn jobs, even though they're doing it begrudgingly. They're still doing more than the Supreme Court is. The Supreme Court's basically just saying, no, fuck all of you, get out of our sight. They give the voter fraud thing more credence than they give our actual constitutional rights being basically whittled away.
If the Supreme Court would have at least looked at the case and, looked at the evidence and said, sorry, there's, we can't make a ruling here, etc., instead of just, not looking at it altogether, that's when it was like, what do we do now?
So I don't want to use the coded language, so please take this as though it's candid, and I'm not alluding to any of the policies or anything that Biden is putting forward right now or the committee he's putting together. How do you feel about Supreme Court reform? As in, like, is there anything about the court that you would see at the system level change to accommodate some of the logistical challenges they have, where they have to pick and choose cases? They don't tell you why they deny cases, right? A lot of the time. Is there anything that you would see change where you're like, hey, there's a better way to do this in a modern age so that we can get what we want out of this group, this very small group of people? Like, what would you see done?
I'd start with transparency. Since they are the public servants, they should have to show all their work. And that way we could look over and see where the inconsistencies are, study the data, and then go from there on what's actually not working. Because there are some cases that have been very beneficial to us. So in some cases it does work, but in other cases, like you were saying, they're just not taking up cases that they really should be taking up, and our rights and liberties suffer because of that.
Just a second. AGK47 is saying that I'm very quiet. I just changed the audio settings. Does it sound any better, AGK?
Looks like he's saying you just move your mic closer if you can, or get closer to your mic.
I can't. It's on my headphone.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, that's what I'm using too, AirPods.
Yeah, well, I don't have AirPods. I've got, I guess, analog style, but I did just mess around with the input settings, so I'm still quiet. Okay.
You definitely don't want them to pack the courts, though. I don't know if that's going to help.
Yeah, I agree, by the way, on court packing being the wrong solution. And I think it's wrong for more reasons than just like, what if we had more justices that could rule on more cases? There's that aspect of it. And I'm like, okay, but that's not why we're doing it. And we shouldn't like BS around that, right? The reason that Democrats have talked about packing the court is so that they can get favorable outcomes by that court. And as soon as that happens, that means GOP does it too. And that's not going to be good for, the other side, the other half of the country that doesn't like those policies, right? So,
yeah.
And between you and me, and I guess the internet, I prefer a conservative SCOTUS. Like, I 100% prefer judges that are more likely to say, wait, pump the brakes on that. Because I think that they're probably, over the long run, going to be much better on civil liberties than, like, neoliberal judges. If you got like a left libertarian in there, I wouldn't personally complain too much. But the idea of the prospects of that, I think, are pretty low. Like, I think they're going to pick kind of like a blue party line or a red party line for the most part.
What does the Constitution say about how many judges there should be?
I think that was ratified after.
Yeah.
What was that?
I think Allan's right. It was ratified later. I want to pull that up really quick.
Actually, I think there was like 3 less or something than there is now. I'm just drawing off memory.
Yeah, I think there was a time where there were like 5 justices, even like way back in the day. And there was a time where there were less, and they've added. So I don't have everything like right in front of me. I just did like some quick Googling here, but it looks like there have been times where there's been different numbers of justices, and there's also a lot of games that they can play with the court, right? Like, so if a justice needs to get confirmed or they need to have a justice in the interim and things like that, there's a lot of games that I believe Congress can play to that effect. There's some games that the president can play to that effect. And it kind of gets wonky because there's so much like admin stuff, right? That kind of changes how we view the Constitution on top of constitutional authority and constitutional interpretation and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I mean my point being is that, like, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's like a lot of these systems are complicated, and a lot of the reasons that we don't get what we want is because these systems have been bloated. So in that aspect, like, it's weird to say that I'm a liberal for smaller government, but I am. Because I see the powers of administrative organizations in government and the powers that have been assumed by Congress or assumed by SCOTUS or assumed by the president by fiat as like a really big issue. So
yeah, that's fair.
If we well, with the Supreme Court thing, I think ultimately the lower courts are bailing us, you know, and that's why they're getting overloaded at the Supreme Court. But I've been thinking, like, what if states, you know, like states, if they couldn't push things to the Supreme Court if it's already been ruled against them? Because, you know, it should be in the interest of the public and the people. And if the states are, you know, because like Xavier Becerra, he's just doing it out of animosity and spite, you know, to continue with all of the stuff that he's doing. He knows that there's no real fruit to his claims, but, you know, he just does it anyways because he knows it fills his pockets, essentially.
AGK47 had a good comment. I think court packing sets a dangerous spiraling precedent, and yeah, that's true.
Yep.
And then RC Video Studios says the initial intent of the Supreme Court was to be disconnected from politics and rule on the constitutionality of laws, so a more conservative court, and I'm assuming he doesn't mean in a partisan way conservative court, but more conservative court would accomplish that. That's probably true, yes.
Yeah, and actually, so Allan, if we want to get into my views on what it means to be liberal or conservative, on that note, with conservatism, I see that as how should we conserve society. So if you want to be like, I guess, like technically precise, that would be kind of like a scrutin conservative or an empirical conservative. So I would consider myself in that camp, but I think that differs from the colloquial or common definition a lot. Obviously with my views, right? So I don't think that, say, Trumpists are conservative in that way. I don't find Trumpists to be empirically conservative because I don't think that they're trying to conserve society. In that vein, like they're cool with authoritarianism if it's Trump.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't notice that they're the same as the opposite side.
Yeah, and I think
that's shocking to me.
Right, like, and the thing on my end is that's where I think like the ideal kind of conservative mindset would be: don't abandon the good in society for whatever new idea comes up, but do consider that we do have to change to survive. Do consider that there are things that need to change. And so in that sense, yeah, like that's how I see my conservatism, quote unquote, is in a more philosophical place than a political place. Where I see my liberalism is mostly, I don't want to use the classical sense in the Dave Rubin brain farty way. that's an aspect of it where I do see like the original tenets of liberalism, freedom of the individual, preservation of civil rights, stuff like that. I do see that there. But I also do adopt, a couple left of center positions. Like if you were looking at me culturally, it would be fair to say that I'm pretty left culturally, but I'm not left like economically. I'm not left, like I prefer capitalism. Generally, I think there's a couple industries that are okay to socialize. I think it's okay to have something socialized. Education's okay to be socialized.
As long as the state's not in, full control of what they're,
no, and I agree with that. So like where I want to see regulation in the market is not a central planner. I want to see like monopoly busting so that small businesses can compete. In theory, in philosophy theory land, I would be cool with a repeal of the minimum wage, for instance. So like, I would be open to employers being allowed to barter. Say like you work for a shop that has a bedroom upstairs. And so if you work 20 hours or 30 hours a week in that shop, you have a free bedroom that you can use, and you don't take a wage for it, but you have your rent in San Francisco covered that way, right? Basically, or something like that. Like, I think that would be cool to have that kind of flexibility as an option.
One heck of a job for San Francisco.
Right. But like, I think it would be cool to have those kind of like deals, those bartering systems as options on the table, without doing like weird 1099 stuff where we screw gig workers and, it kind of just like force the game in favor of, if you already have a bunch of money, if you're already winning the game, then you just get to win more. If you're winning the game that much more, like if you're Facebook, you can go work on legislation that's going to attack free speech rights and that's going to curtail the ability of other businesses to grow, to promote your own business because you're already in the lead. Like I think that's jacked up. So on my end,
you can also just ignore existing precedent and laws such as Section 230, which basically tells you you're not allowed to be a fact checker of any kind. You are just to allow things to play out as they do because you're not liable for it. You don't get to control the narrative.
Yeah, ultimately it's accountability. We, as citizens, we have to be accountable, but, these big corporations and stuff, they can just pay a fine and, none of them go to jail. They're off to do another scam another day.
Yeah, and I think on that note, and this might be a place where I feel like I might have an ideological edge here that maybe you haven't either worked out or explained on your side how you kind of get there. I feel like with me, my position's like, hey, there's some things that need to be regulated, and it's very, very cool to regulate those. Like, as long as you're intelligent with your regulation, every time you put pen to paper on a law, you need to be very deliberate, very clear. You need to know that it can backfire in a bunch of different ways. So you need to be conservative with how you write law, but I'm in a position where I'm like, yeah, I don't mind monopoly busting. Yeah, I don't mind if corporations have to be regulated. Yeah, I don't mind if there's certain rules that exist for us in like the public square, So like in that sense, I feel like I have an easier time saying, yeah, let's break down this business and let's maybe do something about how Facebook is working and how they can and can't do that. Where I feel like if you're very right wing, you might not have that because a lot of the economic right wing is like, no, the reason that they're an oligarch is because they're just successful at business, So like why are you going after their private property? Why are you trying to limit their freedoms or what they can do? So like I see things like that, and I don't know if you have an answer to Facebook from the right wing that doesn't make you look like a socialist in some regard. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my question there.
Yeah, I think, Facebook, they've constituted fraud. They say one thing, they say that they're a neutral platform, and, they're clearly acting as a publisher. So, the best thing to do is just say, all right, you want to be a publisher? Go ahead. You're no longer getting the tax forgiveness or whatever, forbearance.
Well, it's not only that, but just the freedom from liability from what gets posted on the site. Because if somebody, for example, remember when people were posting suicide and murder videos on Facebook? Where they live streamed it? Facebook isn't responsible for that under Section 230. They are responsible for it, however, if they decide to be a publisher, because they didn't actively not just dissuade, but forbid that from happening.
Yeah, and I think the fact, like, to piggyback on that, the fact that Facebook does say in court, oh, we can't possibly moderate all these comments. We can't possibly moderate them. It's a free speech platform. And then they get to turn around outside of court and tell their users, no, we're going to control what you say. Yeah, I think that's an issue. I don't think they get to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
But I think
they shouldn't be the people deciding what hate speech is. Because, a lot of things you can say sarcastically or in a joke or even quoting someone and they'll say, oh, that's hate speech. Be like, I don't actually hate these people.
Well, here's an idea. If you don't like what somebody says, you don't necessarily have to listen to it. Now, I know that's filthy fucking rich coming from me, given my last bit of antics over the last week. But no, but seriously, if it's really to the point where you're so upset that you're going to go to Facebook and report, like, for example, I got Facebook jail for 30 days on my first offense for a thing I had posted from like 4 months ago, back when the Kyle Rittenhouse thing was all hot.
Oh, yeah.
I posted something, and I called somebody out on something they had said that I basically told them they were speaking fascist rhetoric, and she reported, first of all, deleted all of her stuff that she had said, and then tried to say, what are you talking about? I didn't say anything. But that's not the point. She then reported my post, going through my Facebook page, going through a year's worth of posts, and just picking out, and I post a lot of shit on my page. I'll go a week without touching it, and then I'll go a week where I just post everything I agree with or I find funny. But she went through all that and pulled out like 5 different things that I had said in the last year, and one of them was that. And apparently, not only did she show that on her thing, she then reported it. So I get a nice little notification from Facebook saying that you have been basically put in the Facebook jail for 30 days. And I was like, for what? And the reason was supporting domestic terrorism. And I appealed it, and of course Facebook said, no, it's still supporting domestic terrorism. It violates our guidelines. So, no, that's bullshit. They shouldn't have the ability to do that if they're going to operate under Section 230.
Yeah, they would need like a moral, objective, third-party reviewer to do any sort of enforcement.
Right.
But my biggest thing is if you have a problem with someone online and you just can't, get past it, that's what the block function is for.
That was the other thing I was going to say, and I totally forgot that. But I got rambly. But yeah, no, I mean, it's,
if they come on different accounts and can start harassing, that's when you can, be like, hey, this person's, obviously breaking terms of services, use multiple accounts just to harass. There's no.
Then, if it's to the point where you're so concerned about it that you basically have to get the person removed from the platform, and maybe you should file a report with the police. That's I'm not all about like, oh, I need the police for protection or anything. I'm very much against that ideal.
Yeah, well, those things are good to have on record in case they ever do come like 3 years down the road when their wife leaves them and they're just, they're like, oh, that. Yeah,
well, the whole point of police, and coming from somebody who actually was going to college for law enforcement, criminal justice and focusing in law enforcement, is just to take a report. Because unless you live in a police state like North Korea, you don't have enough cops to be everywhere at every time, making sure nobody sneezes in the wrong direction. That's relevant for today's world.
Oh, I think we're in a police state right now, but
I don't think we're quite there yet.
I don't think we're as bad as some other police states, but I think we're in one. We absolutely have worship of a thin blue line here. With a lot of people, right? We have a lot of gun owners, paradoxically, who go thin blue line, but then also say shall not comply, which is fascinating.
Flag right next to a thin blue line flag. I saw that today while I was
personally.
Driving. I was like, how the hell do you come?
I think if they're going to be consistent, the thin blue line should be just FBI gang, like the Juggalos are.
Right. But seriously though, it's an issue because. And for the record, when I try to untangle these things, this is why I'm doing it. Is like there's issues like this that I think the Second Amendment communities talk to death. But then when I go in and I want to talk about, I'll talk about like the Confederate flag, or I'll talk about making gun stores apolitical, so that we can include more people and we can reach a wider audience. Because like right now the market is showing that that's working for gun stores, and I think it's a problem that we run into because. you start repping a set, people feel like they don't want to show up. Whether that's pro cop, whether like Allan, straight up, would you go shop somewhere that had a Black Lives Matter flag put up?
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I work with clients all the times that have, you know, totally like radical different views, and like they got Biden stickers on their car in their front yard and all of that.
Well,
You know, politics
my
doesn't
view on
really
that, Walt,
invade my personal life much.
Gotcha.
With you saying we need to not be so partisan with our business approaches for like gun stores, I agree with you to a point, but I also think that businesses should be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And
I'm not disputing their right.
If they lose business, however, because of that, that's how it is. I actually had a conversation with an old boss of mine, kind of in a similar topic, where it came to the whole gay wedding cake thing. I think that if a bakery doesn't want to do it, they don't have to. But if they lose business because there just happens to be a large LGBTQ community around them, and somebody decides, hey, I'm going to open up one that I'm going to cater to everybody, then I mean, that's survival of the fittest.
Yeah, that's free market.
That's free market. That's
best.
good free market. That's the free market that we want, not the, oh, I'm going to start a corporation and own everything, like what you're talking about, Walt. We need monopoly busting.
Yeah, no, and for the record, I do agree with the wedding cake precedent that the Supreme Court set. I think that was a really good way of dealing with that, and I think that was I 100% think that the ruling there to say, hey, look, you can't force them to say something for you just because you paid them. They can refuse that work if they want. That's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable stop, and like you said, the free market deciding after the fact is good.
Wouldn't it be technically slavery if, you know, they were forced to do that, even if they're getting compensated for it?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily slavery, maybe coercion.
Indentured servitude, maybe.
I mean, in a strict, like, kind of like lateral sense, yeah. Like, I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe that's not the right word for it, but it's
no. Like, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, like forcing them to give labor. Like, could you picture the most left-wing person, and then how you would explain that? It's, you are forced to give labor to espouse a political message that you disagree with, or a message that just is so offensive to your values. Like, if I went into, like, let's say if I went into a gay bakery, an LGBT-friendly bakery, and I said, I need you to make a cake that says, Bible values are rad, you know, they should be able to tell me no.
You got to go with a more hardcore example.
Yeah, if I need you to say, like, you know, or, well, I mean, I don't even need to. Like, they should be able to say no right there. And the reason is, like, if they don't want to make a cake for a church, they shouldn't have to. Like, I 1000% believe that. It's not just like, oh, a Nazi comes in and wants a swastika cake, right? There's more to it than that. So the idea is just behind, like, no, you don't get to compel speech. Your rights include the freedom to not practice the right. So
it's kind of like how back in the old days, now I know this got abused, unfortunately, but back in the old days, you could refuse service based on anything. You know, it was basically written on the side of on the wall of the building, we reserve the right to refuse service for any reason. Now, I think that it's good that we don't have a system where just because you're black, you can't go to a place because they'll say, we're not going to serve you. I think that's obviously wrong. But I think we would make strides in maybe customer service, people being treated a lot better. If you came in there with a shitty attitude and started treating people like shit, then you can say, okay, get the fuck out of the store.
I mean, business owners can do that, you know? So, so like the issue with that stuff, like with we have a right to refuse service. The reason that, like, so much anti-discrimination stuff has happened is because they didn't have a way of dealing with that while people were denying business just for race, religion, whatever. And so, like, legislation has come through to improve that, and to make it so, no, like, if you're going to kick them out of your store, yeah, you need to have an actual reason that's not those things. But then people can work around those things. And, like, hey, I'm all ears on ideas. I don't know how to solve that problem. Like, perfect candor, I don't know how to how to make sure that someone doesn't. It's like the same thing with jury selection, by the way. You can't kick a juror out because of their race or because of their gender, but you can list whatever other reason you want and kind of get away with it, right? So unless you get called on it in court, and then you have a series, like there's literally lessons that go out to lawyers, like video seminars and stuff that they can do that explain how to argue that they're not discriminating based on those things. Like it's actually training they get, even though they do it.
To get a discrimination case to stick, you got to have someone that's really dumb and put themselves on record, because otherwise they can just be like, no, we did it because he had poor performance and we'd give him 3 warnings.
Or, hey, Walt, here's the best way to get kicked out of a jury without any other reason. Just mention jury nullification.
Right? Get yourself arrested while you're at it.
The forbidden knowledge.
Possibly get yourself arrested while you're at it. Possibly get held in contempt. I don't know if that's federal, and I don't know how much of an urban legend that is, though. So, but I hear you shouldn't do it.
They've used it. They used it back when they had.
Oh, I mean getting imprisoned for it.
Oh, I don't think that you can't, because it is a thing you can do. It's just mentioning it during jury selection is an issue.
Yeah, which is why I'm like. But yeah,
I mean, like if you're a juror, just shut the hell up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Bring that up when you're deliberating.
Sure.
If the case merits it. Obviously, you don't use that for every. If you obviously concede that this person slaughtered these children, you're not going to say, oh well, yeah, he did it, but no, that's going to be guilty motherfucker. But if it's, for example, if it's a case of this guy had a gun that he wasn't supposed to be carrying. However,
he got a flash hider on it.
Well, no, not even that. However, he was out in public and he was assaulted with deadly intent by the assaulter, and he pulled a weapon and fired it. Yeah, he did break the law. He wasn't supposed to be carrying. But is that murder? No. So, and the prosecution typically does go for the harshest sentence. So they're going to say it was murder because he doesn't have for example, the Kyle Rittenhouse case thing. I know I'm jumping around a bit. Just bear with my ADHD. But a lot of the arguments against his self-defense is he was breaking the law by carrying a firearm as a minor.
Sure.
And during curfew hours, he wasn't supposed to be out. So they say...
But we're going to charge him as an adult.
Yes, yeah, I do see the hypocrisy in that. Well, you're a little more versed in the legal side of that, and I don't know if there is any double jeopardy there or something. If they charge him as a minor.
I don't know if it would be double jeopardy that applies, and I'm also not a lawyer, but I don't think it's double jeopardy for them. I think double jeopardy is when you get charged twice for the same crime.
They can't charge him after he gets exonerated or
wrong terminology, but basically conflict.
Like there is kind of a puzzling thing there, though, right? Because it's a prosecutor charging him as an adult, but then charging him for crimes that could only be committed by a minor. So it's like there is this weird double standard, and I could see very easily. I think Rittenhouse probably has a pretty good odds of getting off on most of the major charges.
I mean, he's still going to get something at the very least.
I think he might get like a curfew violation or something like that. I think he might cop like a reckless endangerment. That's possible because hey, Second Amendment, you gotta if you discharge a firearm, you leave with your lumps. Like it's a huge responsibility at the end of the day.
RC says hashtag not legal advice. Yeah, so I didn't mean to say
very
you
much
were a
so.
lawyer. Well, I apologize.
No,
I was saying
no, you didn't say that. Yeah, no. And I try to put it in like consideration. The extent of my legal studies, for fun, sometimes I go jump on Justia and I look up legal precedent, and then I've taken a philosophy of law class. And then my current degree path is philosophy of morality, politics, and law. So that's where I spend my time is kind of studying the philosophy around this stuff. And sometimes reading decisions and legal documents is fun, but that's still a skill that I'm working on because it's very easy to get that wrong, especially when you're working by yourself, which is why I don't comment too much on a bunch of legal issues.
Right.
Is because that's not specifically my expertise, but I'm tangential to it, so I get some of it, but I don't. Yeah, I try really hard not to pretend to be anything that I'm not.
Well, speaking of tangents, I got off on one. So looping that Kyle Rittenhouse example back to what I was saying earlier. So like I said, the situation is the guy pulled a firearm and used it in what most people would consider not in a legal sense, but consider common sense wise as a self-defense situation, but because, for example, he wasn't licensed to carry a firearm in the locale he was in, the prosecutor is going for a murder charge because he broke the law, therefore negating the right to self-defense, or the privilege of self-defense, as it's a lot stated mostly.
I have a theory on that.
Have jury nullification come in and say, yeah, he broke the law, we get that. The law is stupid, and if he hadn't broken the law, he would be dead right now, and he wasn't the one that started the altercation. Therefore, we recognize he broke the law, but we move to nullify.
Yeah, that's the spirit of the law.
That is the whole point of it. That's how they used it back in the days of the runaway slaves, which is where they used it most frequently. Was, yeah, the slave ran away, but who fucking cares? They're free. They should be free.
They really shouldn't be punishing the person who is trying to do right just because there are laws on the books that they can stick them with.
Yeah.
You know, they should
because the laws
look to the person
unjust.
that had the malicious intent and that was actually trying to do a crime, and then deal with them. Unless the person was just so egregious in their use of self-defense that they shot the guy 20 times in the head after he had stopped and was on the ground and already dead.
Exactly. But that goes beyond the scope of my example, of course.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
I just wanted to add the caveat because people will always come in and try to be like.
Of course, there's always the what if brigade, but.
Well,
exactly.
And I think one of the issues right now with Wisconsin law is that, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be because again I'm not a lawyer and I'm not from Wisconsin, but I think the thing with the homicide law there is that you could have a justifiable homicide while you're committing a crime, and that's something that could walk you down like instead of like a first degree charge, like a second degree, that type of thing. So it's a defense that could lower your charges. So there's other issues at play for Kyle too that are past that. So like, was he violating the law? Arguably with curfew, but is that the type of offense that they really want to have that law be focused on? Should it be interpreted that way? There's a lot of relevant questions here, but most of the defense attorneys who I've watched analyze the Rittenhouse shooting have said like outright that they'd love to take up that case, that they'd feel very comfortable on that.
Do you watch
R&R? I did watch R&R, yeah.
It even came out that the DA was maliciously going after that kid, for political gains.
Well, the DA may have, but the prosecution, I actually was a little invested in this when it was, a hot topic. The prosecution's version of events actually lends a lot of credence to the side of Kyle. The way they worded it is they mentioned that he was attacked. Never did he actually become the aggressor. He was the one that was always being attacked.
I think, this may be conspiratorial, but I think, they know that nothing's really going to stick. They're either trying to get a plea or the process is the punishment. They're trying to scare people from, going out and wanting to do the right thing. Because look what could happen. Look what happened to Kyle Rittenhouse. He was, doing, trying to protect a business or a gas station.
Right. I mean, I do have issue with his motivation as far as...
I think his heart was in the right place, but his brain was on vacation.
Well, he was a child, and I know that people are going to bring up the militia stuff from the Revolutionary War and all that, and the beginning of our nation. But currently, we consider people under the age of majority of 18, for most places, to be children.
It used to be 21, yeah.
Well, 21 in some places, it depends, and I also have issues
cultures.
with that. I have issues
cultures,
with, the differences in age of majority. When you're 21 and you can't buy a beer till you're 21, but you can.
Yeah, I think that's all bullshit.
Forced to obey the draft. So, fuck all that nonsense. But no, people do say, well, the militia says that anybody who's 17 or older. Okay, but that right now we consider the age of majority to be 18. Therefore, he shouldn't have been out there because he was a fucking kid, and he clearly didn't have the experience necessary to really know what to do effectively in that situation. Now, he handled himself as well as he could. I'll give him that. He
was a great shot.
Well,
that
point blank.
Well, it happens and people do it. Like, I think he handled that situation. The only thing that I would have, if I'm going to Monday morning quarterback Kyle, other than why the hell are you there?
Yeah, right.
The only other thing that I would say is next time walk and run heel toe when you're carrying a gun instead of toe heel.
Yeah. Well,
Like
and also,
that's
what happened to the adults that were
Keep
with
your
him
eye
that
on the
just
people that
left
are
him out
chasing.
there to basically get slaughtered by the crowd?
yeah. Like there's so much going on with that situation. I think he demonstrated a certain level of like quote unquote tactical proficiency. That is admirable, but I think it's also like if he wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. On the other hand, does he have a right to defend himself? I think so.
Oh, I
So,
agree.
you know,
It's like,
I
I used
don't.
the example in my video of it where I said, imagine it's a teenage girl going to a house party, past curfew, with a pocket knife. If she goes to that house party, she gets a little messed up by some alcohol or drugs or whatever, and then 3 guys try to take advantage of her in her state, and she knifes them. Are we charging her with murder because she was about to be raped and she
Right.
defended herself?
Well, when she left the house with a knife, that was intended, or
of
commit
course.
harm on it.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, and that's the thing. So like, so to go back to Allan's conspiracy, I'll raise you. I'll see you and raise you. I think that the most politically expedient thing that could happen for a prosecutor on a contentious case like this would be to throw the book at him, and then when it fails and falls through, they get like 1 charge.
Like,
Whatever.
more laws.
They can push more laws. They can say that they can say that justice was done because they represented it fairly and he was let off. And they can also say that they threw the book at him. And I think it could give him a little bit of like, I hate invoking 1984, but a little bit of doublespeak there. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so kind of like a win both sides.
Even if they lose, they win.
Right. There's a possibility that this is merely a political opportunity in the eyes of the prosecutor. Not even like not even like a witch hunt. Not even anything else. Just this case for our office is gives us net positive leverage regardless of how it turns out. So we're just gonna do it. Like that's a possibility. And I don't know if that's gonna be what happens, but I'm very interested in seeing how it unfolds.
RC Video Studios says reductio ad absurdum.
That is fancy for reduced to absurdity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't speak Latin. Now you can barely speak any Spanish.
So it's all good. So like, yeah, the idea of reductio is it's like a philosophical tool that you can use to illustrate absurdities and things. And then the way I like to use it is to run conclusions to ridiculous ends to kind of get an idea of where and why a certain thing stops at a certain point. So like a certain line of thinking stops at a certain point. Why is that? And
Sounds
it
like
can be used
HR
to
127.
right.
I'm not too worried about that bill.
Reduced to absurdity. Gun ownership is completely illegal because guns are so regulated and like that you literally can't do anything with it. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think Sheila Jackson that's her name, right? Has introduced legislation like basically every year to this end with like just different batshit crazy gun laws in it.
It's as heavy as 10 moving boxes you may be moving.
I thought that was somebody else that said that.
No, that's Sheila Jackson.
Oh my god, that dumb bitch. No, but like that's part of why I'm not concerned about this.
I worry about her.
Everybody is up in arms about it, and I'm just like, but why? First of all, it's just been
introduced. It won't pass.
Yeah, it's just been introduced. It has no co-sponsors. It's not going anywhere. It's just a bill to say, look, I'm doing something in the most ridiculous, stupid way possible.
Yeah. Well, the reason I said I was worried about her, because I know she didn't write it, but whoever she allowed, paid to write it or had write it, her team, they didn't put a lot of thought into the constitutionality or even if it would pass muster to get, past the first stages.
Yeah, that's why I haven't done a video on it, because I don't want to come off as fear-mongery on my channel. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Yeah,
that's a big issue. I don't know if we want to segue back into any other criticisms, though, because I mean, I know we were here to beef it out, but yeah, like that's an issue that I see a lot with the gun community, where there will be things where we make them out to be the end of the world. Like if you type in gun apocalypse right now, right, you're going to get blown up. And if you go search every year, you're going to find gun apocalypse bills, right, that are always looming. And
UA needs their money.
Yeah, like I mean, I 1000% hear that.
Well, it's like what you said with the 1776 thing. you say it enough, and people just don't pay attention.
They
anymore.
get desensitized to it, and the point is not that you shouldn't be allowed to say a word. Like whenever I say like don't say this, I'm not saying ban your speech. I like in the same way that
stop saying this.
Yeah, if in the same way that like I would say like it's a bad idea for me to call your girlfriend or wife a slut. It's not because I might not feel that way or I might feel that way or whatever. It's literally because it's just a non-productive thing to say that I think is going to probably wind up biting me later. And my perspective, my background, my expertise is in the messaging, like with the whole psychological operations thing, advertising, marketing, sales. That's been my life for the better part of a decade and a little bit more. So like with what I do,
shady backgoings on, but in the mind manipulation that is happening.
Yeah, so like I get that, and that was one of the big reasons that I've left sales jobs or marketing jobs in the past, is because I've seen some of the things that have been said in the past where companies were so dishonest. I was doing work for a chiropractor one time, and he wanted me to say that chiropractic could cure autism. That was one where I was like, this is a hard no for me. I'm not going to work for you anymore.
The turpentine thing.
Right. Like I'm not going to put out a message that I believe is false. And so I'm not going to do that. I've worked in the solar industry before, and there were a lot of things that I've seen done by solar salesmen in that industry. I mean, California, and the solar salesman trope, always knocking on the door, right? Always calling you. Because the solar industry is huge out here in California, but there's also a lot of dishonest solar salesmen that I've had the opportunity to meet, or that I've heard about, or that I've had to run damage control for. And that's something where I'm like, yeah, you know what, this industry right now with like just how they run their sales and everything, this isn't every corporation. When I walk into a gun store, I get an honest sale. I get employees who are telling me what they think for the most part, or they don't know what they're talking about. And that's about as worse as it is. Or the worst of it, right? But like, or if I walk into Walmart, someone shows me where to buy something, right? Like, there's things like that, right? But then there's these other industries where, real estate is notorious for dishonesty. Not saying every realtor is dishonest, but things like lying about square footage in certain markets, right? Lying about features, embellishing, right? Lending, same thing. All kinds of things, yeah. High ticket sales.
Inspector. Don't go with the inspector the realtor offers, because they are usually buddy-buddy.
Right. And so it's like there's a bunch of agencies where I'm like, yeah, if I work for these people, I don't have an issue working in the agency per se, but I'm very, very picky about who I work for. And I'm not going to work for someone that I think is dishonest. Right. Because on my end of things, when I was selling solar, I was always, hey, look, these are the numbers. This is how it's going to break down based off of this estimate. Your experience may change slightly. These are the things that will inform that. These are the assumptions I made in preparing your estimate. Do these seem reasonable to you? Okay, here, and that would be how I do it. I would just walk them through and be like, these are the numbers. What do you think? And I wouldn't be pushing on every single psychological pull button that I could to kind of weasel a sale. Because the people that did that, their sales fell through. And there were a lot of guys at places where I worked where they could sell 30, 40 deals in a month. Incredible. And then over half of them fall through because the people realized they were lied to, or they weren't qualified, or this and that, right? So like, I don't think that the use of psychological appeals is inherently dishonest. I don't find that to be grifty. What I find to be grifty, what I find to be dishonest, is when the facts, what you're representing, and then you deliberately misrepresent it for the intention of misleading someone when that was unnecessary. So to me, that's grift.
And that's one of the things that really gets me going, because I'll tell someone, facts, and if they read the facts and say, no, I'm still going to go with what I'm saying. It's like, either you're being cognitively dissonant, or there's some ulterior motive going on here.
Yeah, and this is an option. Someone could just disagree with you on the facts, right? So like they could read what you proposed, and then they could see it, right, and go, actually, but there's this other evidence, and I'm led to a different conclusion. And I'm cool with that. I try to be
My example
very
for that
generous.
would be the brace thing.
That's fair. Like, there's like, how many gun channels out there did that, right?
Yeah, and I did my best to let people know. Of course, they're big channels; they may not see my comment, but I know some of them did, and then still continue to push it. and the fear mongering side over the top. Yeah, because they know that they're going to get more clicks. Because what sells other than fear? Sex.
And anger. Anger is actually your number one engager online.
Fear leads to anger.
For promoting.
Anger leads to hate.
Right? No, actually, I shit you not, though. They're, although I always appreciate Star Wars memes, especially prequel memes. Anger is the top engager online. So if you make people angry, that's how you get them to share your content, and that's going to be the most consistent thing you can do. Which sucks so bad for. It sucks so bad for big corporations that need to get people moving on things, but it's really good for political activists, right? So like big corporations, you don't want anger associated with your brand image because you need to have a positive image for people to want to come back to you. But with anger, right, you get to you want to motivate a political cause, you want to motivate a change, get people pissed off. It works.
So what we were saying is there's motivation for corporations to pay politicians to rile up their base, help the business on the long run.
Yeah, so like if you wanted to talk about something that could be going on, I have no problem pissing off the firearms manufacturing industry because I'm not going to take any money from them ever. I'm very deliberate. Like I want everything I do to be fan funded. And so that's my path with my any money from YouTube, and it's peanuts right now. Like I'm very much in the red as far as what I've put in versus what I've gotten. But as far as that goes, yeah, like who benefits from confusion on pistol braces? Who benefits from rounds of bans on different items or on threats of bans? I'm a big fan of Smith & Wesson, and I like some Ruger firearms, but guess whose stock is going up right now, right? So
well, it's like Yankee said, he wouldn't care if Smith & Wesson, even though it's his favorite gun brand. He wouldn't care if it went belly up tomorrow if it meant that the 2A was safe forever.
Yeah.
Same with Ruger. They're the ones that did the 10-round thing. Or they didn't do it, but they were supportive.
Yeah, Bill Ruger, yeah.
Well, as far as I understand, Bill Ruger did that so that they wouldn't have gone through with a bigger ban.
It's still negotiating with terrorists. I don't know.
Actually, yeah. So let's talk about that, because you and I have really big disagreements there. So my perspective on negotiation, to clear the air, is not that you should cede ground to the quote-unquote terrorist, right? So I don't have a problem talking to, let's say, Al-Qaeda, just to be hyper-specific. I have zero issue talking to them. I think that that can save a lot of lives. Like in a deployment environment, it's possible that by you having a conversation with your enemy, you can save lives. And that's something that happens, frankly, all the time. In the invasion on Iraq, there was a psychological operations element that did a surrender appeal for the Ba'athist forces out there, and I think they got somewhere between 200 to 400 of them to surrender without a shot being fired. Right? That's great. That's objectively, in my opinion, a good thing. Objectively, in my opinion, right? The quip there, but I think that's a good thing for the war. You saved resources, you saved lives, you saved foreign lives. All in all, that's great. Now, what did the U.S. Army not do with that, and what's the difference, right? Well, the U.S. Army didn't compromise a damn thing by doing that, other than maybe checking a little bit of ego, right? Instead of just steamrolling and sending infantry because, fuck them, right? It's, hey, we're going to do this really calculated surrender appeal. And in these circumstances, because we set up the negotiation properly, we set up the appeal well, we did our homework, and we got the message out, it was successful, and it worked, and it had a 100% success rate. Everybody surrendered, nobody fought back in this one instance. Is that the case for every negotiation in war in history? Obviously not, right? So I think when it comes to working with liberals on this stuff, the goal is not ever to cede them any ground on taking our rights, because that is completely unacceptable. There's an aspect with negotiations where we can discuss trade-offs. So we could discuss trade-offs on, you get the NFA repealed, but universal background checks are implemented. And maybe other than everything else from the NFA is gone. You can own a machine gun now, but there's a universal background check. It's still more gun control in one area, but you win on others. We can talk about tactically if we want to take that trade and get that legislation through. That's fine, but that's a different discussion. I don't.
because you could probably take down the thing that you agreed on, and then, after that.
A point of interest on that, actually, Walt, is the NFA was created long before the background check system was in place.
Mhm.
So the NFA actually started the first technical background check system by, you had to mail in your tax form thing, and they would do their research on you to make sure you weren't a scary person. So actually, it would make sense and actually not lose us any rights in a way if we were to do away with the NFA but keep UBCs, because it's basically what it is already. But we would get the NFA back without any further restrictions, and especially no extortion from it.
Yeah, and my sole point is you might run into something where that's a trade-off, right? And that's acceptable to me. That's okay, we can have those discussions. I don't think rejecting it would be a good idea, but I'm also not going to ask anyone to compromise. So I think with negotiation, you shouldn't be looking for compromise. You should be looking for opportunities, which is why my angle is, hey, look, I'm cool with some of these welfare programs. I think some of these are necessary. I think some of these can be really good for society. I know not every American agrees with me on my outlook specifically on welfare. But I think a lot of America supports it, and I think a majority of America supports a lot of the welfare programs that I would advocate for. So with that in mind, I say, hey, look, these programs would actually solve your quote-unquote gun violence problem. In fact, they'll pretty much solve your violence problem. Can we do those? And then you don't have to regulate guns anymore. So the trade is, in my view, I'll give you those because I'm with it. I'm somewhere between with it and indifferent. We're talking about fractions of pennies on your taxes annually to cover these programs. In exchange for that, we see, in theory, we could see violence plummet pretty much in totality. Obviously, there's going to be stuff that happens, but if we saw an 80% reduction in suicide, an 80% reduction in homicide, the entire gun violence rhetoric is just destroyed at that point, right? Because now they have no legs to stand on.
Well, looking at Britain, I know you don't like looking at other countries as an example, but but it is a point that they do have the welfare system there, for better or worse, depending on how you view it. But you also look at their violent crime rate, and it's actually not that bad.
Just a little surprise, but yeah, if you treat your people well, and if people are happy in your country, then they probably don't want to kill each other or themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Get rid of the drug trade, and drug war, you'll also solve a lot of that issue. Put people into rehab, and they're less likely to want to go back to the drugs instead of putting them in prison where they'll get the drugs anyway.
Yeah, so whenever I'm going into and I have these talking points, this is the type of thing that I am discussing. I'm not talking about and I never will ever be yes, let's do background checks. The closest thing that I might do, the closest thing to a compromise someone might see me doing is I would be okay if states or localities specifically wanted something like a volunteer gun lock program where you could go and get security for your guns if you just needed to walk in somewhere and get it, where a state could fund the gun shops get they could socialize this one aspect where gun shops get free gun locks instead of having to buy them.
The free condom program,
right? Or if a state wants to fund or a city wants to fund gun safety classes, right, and our tax dollars go to something like that, and these would be very light. They're what's called soft paternalism, which I think is the only form of paternalism that's really acceptable in government. It's very basically you have this option available to you, and the idea with the psychological interface there is if I give you the option, and I present the option in certain ways, you might be more likely to practice in a good way. But I don't need to tell you what to do, and I don't need to tell you or take away your rights or force your choice. I can literally present the option, hey, would you like a gun lock with your gun? And you'll probably just be sure, why not? Right? So there are certain things like that where it's and I don't have to tell you to lock it up. I don't have to tell you all this stuff. I can train you on that. We can do voluntary classes and things like that. But I think having those things as precursors for gun ownership, that's a no-go. So there's absolutely legislation that can be close to that, but they force it a little bit more that I would say no to.
Well, it's kind of like how people will try to say, well, you have to have training to own a gun, so that should be a requirement. You and I both, I believe, would disagree. All three of us would disagree with that, saying that that is a burden to ownership, which is an infringement. However,
Sure.
going back in that same mode of the soft paternalism,
I need
where
training to get a hamburger.
it's a good thing to do, especially if you don't have any experience behind a trigger, but it shouldn't be required for you to exercise a right. It's like saying,
Yeah, they don't.
that'd be like
They
saying
don't need
you
to
have
regulate
go to
common
school if
sense.
you want to be able to vote. That's called a literacy test. That's not, that was thrown out for being unconstitutional.
That's
Yeah.
a good,
No,
I
I
just thought of a
agree.
good point.
Go ahead.
Why do they push common sense, laws? If it's common sense, you don't need a law against it.
Right. Well, and that's actually the point, right? So, given the option, will people generally act in their own self-interest, right? And I think the answer is yes. I think
people are surprisingly overall actually good. Like,
yeah,
they act, in certain ways. Just, you don't have to give them the Bible or, give them a certain belief set. If you let them live, they'll figure it out on their own that, if they punch someone, they're probably going to get punched back. If they harm someone, they're probably going to get in trouble. Certain things in nature are evident.
yeah. No, I agree. And we're also generally cooperative, right? So, like, generally we want to be on really good terms with our neighbors. Like, generally, if we mess up in our neighborhood, we apologize to our neighbors. Generally, if our neighbors need help, we help them out. Even if we don't talk to them too much. If a neighbor knocked on your door and needed to use a phone, you probably let them use your phone. In most places in the U.S., I think it's something like, I think Pew did a poll on it, and I think it was around 2/3 of Americans felt they're like there was at least one person on their block that they would trust with the keys to their house. Like people are generally willing to work together and cooperate, and there's a lot that we can do with that. And to that end, there is absolutely no issue in my mind with extending that olive branch on these things in that spirit of cooperation with fellow Americans, even if they do see things different. Where I do draw lines pretty harshly is like, I'm not going to appease neoliberal candidates ever. So, like, with neoliberal candidates, I think that's like, so your Joe Biden's, your Kamala Harris, right? So that very corporate Democrat type of feel. Those people, they, period, never get appeased. And not that no one gets appeased on gun control anyway, in my view. Like, we don't allow it. But
power never wants less power. As soon as they get the power, they're like, oh, I need more.
Right. And the only but that I have there is that when I have the opportunity to present facts that will change a view or change a vote, or I have the opportunity to present an argument or enforce, I will do that. And I think that's something that hasn't been done. And I do accept that it's a difficult thing, but I think it can be done. I think we just have to get enough populist momentum for a long enough time behind it. And I think that will be enough to start changing that. And the net result from this would be that at some state levels, maybe at the federal level, if we get people smarter and more charismatic than me doing it, and reaching out to these politicians and working with them, if it can be bigger than me, because I'm a guy and, sitting down in my bedroom making videos, right? If we can get someone bigger and more proficient with this stuff than me, and we can get more people involved and get the people moving behind this, I think that we could do that. You flip a few Democrats on gun control issues, if that ever happens, and we flip a few Democrats on gun control issues, we're talking about massive changes that become possible in certain political
Democrats
seasons.
went pro-gun, they'd be a force to be reckoned with.
That's the point of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, cause I don't have like too many, issues, with them. Like I freaking loathe Kamala Harris. I hate her, because of her record on prosecutions, because of how she is to prisoners, because of what she's done on guns, because of so many things about her. Yeah. I don't like the elite either. So I'm not in an income bracket to remotely call myself elite. I'm not, I'm not a fan of any of that. So,
yeah, but of course, there are people that have no money that have the elite mentality.
Sure, and they're really dumb because they don't know what's in their own best interest.
Sheila Jackson.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting
people who voted for
when
Sheila
you guys
Jackson.
are ready for this. Here's an interesting segue because I know this came up before between you and I, Allan.
Mhm.
Are the elites communists or are they wealthy oligarchs?
The elites are pretty much encompassing of both of those. We got oligarchs like Saudi Arabia, but for the most part, our biggest, the ones that's sending us the most trouble and propaganda is China. And they're, people could argue that they're communists on quotes, but communism is communism.
They're politically communist. They're authoritarian.
I'm not gonna fight too much on that distinction tonight because I don't think it's too productive a use of our time to separate like state capitalism from like communism per se versus like Stalinism versus like I don't think that's a worthy use of our time tonight. If someone calls China a communist government, they're talking about a hyper centralized government that ultimately redistributes and has ties to a communist party and things. So I get what they're saying. As far as like the quote unquote like communist influence though, like I don't think so. Honestly, I think Allan's gonna hate me for this one. I think we would be happy under actual if you had true ideological communist rule. I think we would be happier with that than neoliberal rule. Honestly, like that's how bad I don't like elites. Like literally anything is better. I'm not talking like Stalin communism. Obviously, that would be worse. I'm talking like your Marxist communist, your more libertarian, if you will, communist. And I know that's gonna rub
Marxist
you wrong.
Communist, you lost me, but libertarian,
Yeah.
you gave me a little back a little bit.
Yeah, no. Because there are things like anarcho-communists, right? Where like one of the big things with how they would see the world would be like they don't want a government controlling how they distribute resources, and they just look at resources differently. So like, like if you were talking like you and I were on a camping trip or whatever, or you and I were in a foxhole together, right? My water in my canteen is your water. Your MRE is my MRE. There's not a distinction between our property in that situation because we literally just like can't afford to see it that way. It doesn't make sense to us. Life is better if we can, right. Like there's no like communism in my mind could work great if there's no scarcity issues. Problem with the real world though, right? There's a lot of scarcity issues. So is communism practical? In my mind, no. Not until we get to maybe Star Trek, and then you still have to deal with the property rights issues. And I believe in property rights.
Someone once told me that.
So
I think communism and property rights can't ever coexist.
Sorry, that what can't coexist?
Communism and property rights. I don't.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I don't think that they can exist either.
And that's the main reason I'm against communism because you don't have any independence.
That's a valid concern. Like I don't disagree with that, and I 100% agree with you. Like I'm not pro communist in any way. I have no problem talking to commies, quote unquote. But I don't
China
think
people are actually pretty based.
Yeah, no, like and I'm talking like even like the ideological Marxists out there, because there's actually some good things that you're going to hate me for this. There's some good things that Marx has said. And there's misappropriation of what he said by people who have read him, because he's a philosopher at the end of the day, and a lot of people don't understand it. There's a lot of things that he said that, I don't like, or things where the people that adopt the ideology I don't like. But my entire appeal on this, why don't we fix the broken system to stop creating violent outcomes? That's actually like revisionist Marxist justice, basically. That is literally out of their playbook. The difference is I have applied it to a specific issue that I care about in a way that can be synthesized well. So the issue is not anything having to do with property. It's literally, this is what Marx has said on criminal justice, and Marx's probably big takeaway, in my opinion, is why wouldn't you change your society for the better to prevent crime? Like, why would you have a society that creates criminals? That's his entire point on criminal justice as I've read it. So that, and I don't have an issue with that, like that particular part. I do have an issue with capital being reduced to just like labor. I do have an issue with thinking property rights can go away overnight. But also, there's a lot of people out there who would say, hey, maybe he didn't argue that, whatever. I'm not worried about doing apologetics for Marx. Like, I disagree with Marxism as a economic philosophy, and I like my property rights, so he can shove it. But I do like this one thing that he said on justice. Hey, make society better so that you have less crime. Cool. Yeah, let's talk about that. That should be on the table. And the fact that the neoliberal elite ignore that, I think, goes to show that they're more interested in power and winning political points than they are in making the country better. And that's fundamentally my issue with them.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, go against that just because Marx said it. That sounds like a pretty good tenet. Yeah.
RC Video Studios asks you, Allan Powell, what is a leftist to you? It was murky a while before.
Okay. A leftist mainly regards the politicians and the people that ultra support him, like, they're sycophants, essentially. So your Gavin Newsom's, your Joe Biden's, Kamala Harris, AOC, all the people that share that kind of like dystopic level of misunderstanding of reality. And of course,
you're talking more
it aligns
extreme,
with the left,
not just leftist in general.
Yeah, like I'd call Dan Crenshaw a leftist because he spoke out of the TAPS Act and all that. He's a secret leftist.
I think he's just a secret authoritarian, and I guess he's not so secret about it anymore. I know what you're talking about with the secret lists and everything. Yeah, no, he's actually from my state, and that's terrifying.
Wait, so you got Dan Crenshaw and too. Sheila Jackson?
Right.
Yeah,
I have Gavin Newsom and Maxine Waters and Dianne Feinstein
and Pelosi,
Kamala Harris. Yeah, the list goes on.
Yeah, we're screwed. Yeah, like I try to be charitable with stuff like that because I'm like, yeah, like the political definition of a leftist would be someone that is left of center, quote unquote, and so like a leftist would be like if you use the term colloquially in America. Our Overton window is pretty authoritarian, right? So, like, if you looked at the neoliberal on the world stage, they're kind of like near the center right. Like, if we're talking like political compass, right? But in America, yeah, they're on the left. Whereas, like, Dan Crenshaw, they're both authoritarian, right? Like, both, like, say Dan Crenshaw and Joe Biden. So I don't have an issue with saying, like, okay, yeah, he's close enough to a neoliberal, but I don't put him in that camp because, like, this is what I do for school and stuff. So, so like for me, like how I separate might be a little cleaner, but like I get what you mean. I think like the issue that I take is if we brand everyone on the left as as like the same, that we can create a lot of issues. So just to give you a for instance, there's a commentator out there that you may have heard of, Kyle Kalinske, from Secular Talk. He was part of the TYT network. I think he's like still kind of affiliated with them, but he runs his own show. So he's like independent from TYT, but sometimes he gets featured there and stuff. However, he is constantly bashing the liberal elite. He's constantly going after populist stuff, but it's just populist left, right? So like Medicare for all and things like that, raising minimum wage. That's kind of what he wants. That's the type of stuff that he'll talk about. He'll go after hypocrites in the Democratic Party. He'll go after like all of that. And it's like, that's someone where I would go like and say, hey, look, yes, you are by admission, you are a socialist. That means you're on the left. That means you're a leftist. And I'm comfortable with saying that. But also, I don't think that you're my enemy. I think that like he's still libertarian left. He's not an authoritarian. So like he wants government to let off of issues like weed. He wants the government to get out of your bedroom. He wants a lot of the things that we want as far as the anti-authoritarian side. And he's actually winds up being like, say, like a moderate on immigration. So like not even that far left on like, a couple issues. But just like point being is I would be remiss to throw him in the same camp as say like Vosh, or like who is somewhere between a socialist and a rad lib who wants to label everyone in the right wing as a fascist, right? Or like someone like, God, I'm blanking right now. God, yeah, someone like Hassan Piker or whatever, where like they're pretty aggressively like some variation of like revisionist Marxist, right? literal like their entire philosophical basis is basically coming from Marx, and then revisions after the fact. So like I think it's good to segment some of these things, and then also keep that very separate again from that liberal elite, because the liberal elite is, in my opinion, the problem. So like at the end of the day, the one thing all three of us are is anti-authoritarian, right? So like regardless of other policy, I focus on civil liberties and I vote based off of civil liberties. So unless the blue candidates get on them, they're not going to get my vote. Like I don't care. So like if you're bad on guns, or if you're bad on free speech, or if you're bad on anything else, you're not getting my vote. Like that's
voting party lines is really bad.
And that's what does need to change in our country, is not vote on party lines, but vote on policy and policy alone. And a lot of people say that's the same thing. It's
I think it's ultimately all for naught if people aren't actually upholding their oaths. Like, that's the main thing. Like I don't care who's in office as long as they uphold their oath, or held accountable when they don't.
Yeah, but it's getting people to understand when people aren't, and people's different perspectives on their oaths. Because some people might say that certain anti-2A things aren't against the Second Amendment because that's what they've been led to believe.
Well, I just see it as, they took an oath to protect the Constitution. The Constitution says shall not be infringed. Therefore, it would be a violation to even, I consider proposing, H.R. 127, to me, that's a declaration of war on the people.
I wouldn't be so extremist about it, and that's coming from an extremist. But
Mr. Noncompliance.
It sounds a lot harsher.
Here saying, don't be extremist.
Declaration of war does, it's kind of a very impactful word, but it's the best one I can come up with essentially what she's doing. She's saying everyone in this nation is a criminal if they don't follow by these unconstitutional laws.
Yeah, I feel like people still don't understand me when I say if you're going to talk about non-compliant, or that I would never discuss non-compliance, or I would never encourage non-compliance on Discord or YouTube. Then I'm making a very specific claim. I'm saying something very specific, and it's very specific to the audience and location of where I would say that. Not the issue itself. Like the non-compliance, the civil disobedience. If we want to get into that, that's like, I see that as entirely your personal choice. Like, the risks of it. I'm not going to ever encourage illegal activity for a couple reasons. One, it's a really good way to get shut down and prevent any message at all getting out. And two, it's not something that I can afford myself. Right. So like in my career, with what I want to do, that's not something where I can be like, hey, let me go ahead and encourage you to do something illegal. However, I don't think that civil disobedience is morally wrong in all contexts. I think there's a lot of contexts where civil disobedience makes a lot of sense. And I'm not opposed to people practicing it. I would just encourage them to look at it practically and assess like second and third order consequences of what they do. So kind of like tying back to the chant of 1776, I think there's like a time and place for it, but I also think second and third order consequences, if it gets used and abused, you don't want to be crying wolf, right? So that's something where I would just kind of like talk about, and I would say like, hey, yeah, just like consider the second and third order consequences. We can have different opinions on optics. That's fine. Like when I go after a Trump supporter who is pro 2A, because what they're doing is they're branding pro 2A with a movement that America hates. The reason is not that I'm criticizing that they're pro 2A. I freaking love that they are pro 2A. I hate that needs to be co-branded how they're co-branding it, because that just creates propaganda points for our political opponents to use against us that can be very effective, very persuasive in the public square, regardless of the facts, right? So like, I'm trying to think about not giving my enemies a quote line, if you will, right? Yeah. Not giving my opponents a place to mine quotes. So that's kind of that's my perspective on that. So like, I'm not trying to be like, yeah, at all, like no, if you say this, you're anti-American or whatever. It's like, no, just like don't put yourself in that boat. So like when I put that out, I put it out in kind of like a challenging way. I didn't make an argument. So I do disagree with the criticism that it was a straw man. I didn't flesh out an actual argument. I just represented it in a mocking way, but I do see it. I did represent it in a mocking way, and it's something people do take seriously.
RC, I will address you. So he had stated how can we make sure that we agree on what the Constitution says? I could argue that private confiscation is still pro 2A, based on interpretation, question mark. And he says, but don't worry, and he used an example, but don't worry, you can have gun and shooting clubs and hunting clubs, so you can have guns. The issue with that is that the Second Amendment mentions the people, and it's not a collective right, it's an individual right, just the same as the First Amendment is an individual's right that belongs to the society.
Yeah, that's also what the courts are for. The courts are for making sure that the interpretation of the language, because the Constitution is fundamentally an ethical document. It's less a legal document than an ethical one. And it's an ethical document that kind of drives how our legal system works, right? So, so when you appeal to the Constitution, you say this violates my First Amendment right. You're really appealing to like a core philosophical thing. You know, you're not like this very like ethical claim that like I have these intrinsic rights and you're stepping on them and you shouldn't be doing that. And then what the court should be doing is affirming that and trying to make the law make sense with that. And so in theory, what we should do, my opinion on interpreting the Constitution, is that we should understand not only the original intent, but also the operating, like how it operates in actuality with the world we live in now. So we have to understand both the modern and the historic context, but we also have to understand that when it prescribes a right, that's non-negotiable. So, so you don't change it. If you want to change the Constitution, pass an amendment. There's a strategy for that.
Well, you brought up a very good point. I'm sorry to cut you off, Allan, but you brought up a very good point because you say the Constitution is an ethical document, not necessarily legally binding one, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because a lot of the rhetoric from the pro-2A side is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Yeah,
well, that's what ethics are.
The way I would put it is the Constitution is supposed to be like your base computer code, whereas the coding afterwards can't change the base code. It's kind of like if you put in an Android, you cannot kill your master. It can't be corrupted with a virus that changes that code.
So that you can always factory reset it so you can start over again.
Exactly, and I think that's what the idea of the oath was, making sure that people feel like they're saying, my entire being is behind me not violating the Constitution, and therefore I am fit to take office. And if I do, I lose my position.
Well, I love it when the right wants to point out all these people on the left that are you're making the oath and then violating it, but you also have people like Pence who push on the right who said that their God is above the Constitution. And
that should be out of the that should be instant grounds for disbarral or removal, etc.
If the Constitution were to say that God comes above this, it would say that. It doesn't say that. It actually makes no mention of it and strictly prohibits religion having any what do you call it?
That's how you get Sharia law.
Yeah, no, literally that is how you get Sharia law, is when you invoke it, right? Like you get what have you, you get that. Like when we talk about when they say something's a God-given right or an innate right, like they're really just referring to like natural rights and social contract with that. Like that's what they mean. So it's like it doesn't need to be interpreted functionally as though it's a theocratic document ever, like the Declaration of Independence or any of it. It shouldn't be interpreted as though it's pushing for like a constitutional republic, like a theocratic constitutional republic or something. It's pushing for a constitutional republic or a democratic republic, however you want to refer to it. But it's not pushing for theocracy at all. I agree. As far as if that's ground to be disbarred, or rather removed from office, I can see it being disqualifying if someone uses it to avoid their duty, to shirk duty, basically. But I personally don't know if that would be grounds. If someone said, I value my God and my religion over the laws of the land, but they still follow the laws of the land, they just hold different things having like if it's in the proper box and it's separated, I'm cool. If it's not separated, then you're right. Like I agree.
In this job I have to operate under these conditions.
Yeah,
parameters.
Yeah.
For example,
we're on the same page.
For example, like say like gambling was legal all across the United States now, just overnight legal, but somebody said it's against my religion, so I'm not going to partake. And that's kind of true classical liberal right there, is you can do it, I'm not going to, but I'm not going to keep you from doing it. That's how it should be.
But the way it is like, I'm religious, I don't like gambling, so we're going to put this bill through, and we're going to get people who are also
like
religious.
Alcohol, so we're starting a temperance movement.
Yeah, prohibition worked out great.
Oh yeah, my ancestors made some good money off of that.
Yeah, right. Gun prohibition hasn't had any effects. Yeah, no, but to that point, yeah, like, no, I'm with you. Yeah, like, I think, like, I don't know if we, like, do we have any other topics that we want to beef out? Like, I know we have so much comment history, you and I, and I want to give the people what they want.
And,
they want the flame war, goddammit.
I do agree with you on the way you describe, what conservatives are nowadays, and how, because like a lot of the times, people, when you say conservative, they assume you're a Christian conservative, and that's completely wrong. Christian conservatives are something completely different than what I would consider someone that just says they're conservative. To me, it means that you want to conserve the Constitution or basic good stuff. You don't want to try and progress into things you don't know what could be the outcome of.
Well, it's like I told Walt earlier before the chat. In an ideal world, progressives apply the gas to societal change when it needs to be, and then the conservatives apply the brakes when we need to slow down, because we're not ready for the change yet.
Yeah, which is why, like, in theory, with big asterisks, because we talked about these problems, but like in theory, like I prefer a conservative SCOTUS because I find that they tend to do better on rights overall than the alternative. And I also find that, and that hasn't always been the case in history. Like there were terrifying court decisions we've talked about, like I've talked about before, Dred Scott, Plessy v. Ferguson, stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, you do get bad precedent sometimes in the courts. But on the other hand, even like, like Kavanaugh, even other conservative justices, Scalia and such, like they've in the past they've voted on issues that people thought were left right, but they actually saw them as liberty or authority, and they ruled on liberty a lot of the time. And they have a tendency to do a better job of that, in my mind. So if you have a like a progressive Congress or Senate that's passing some reforms, and the SCOTUS is able to effectively do their job and say, wait, no, that one overstepped into civil liberties, so that one's a no-go. That would be great in theory. Of course, in practice, SCOTUS is overran with cases, all the other issues we discussed. But yeah, like in theory, that's what I would like. I would like to see that kind of representation across the board. I would like to see us be just more principled in general. Like most of our problems were solved, but people just decide to be better people. And regardless of the political opinions.
I would love a culture shift where people were just, they had like a thirst for knowledge, and understanding. Because right now it seems like everyone just tell me what to do, and that's kind of just driving the divide.
That was something I saw, actually. Like there was a guy who called you like a simp for me in one of my comments, and I'm like, evidently he hasn't read any of your other comments on my videos. I was laughing really hard when I read that, and
I was agreeing with him too. That was the funny part. And he didn't even, he's just so.
Is that the same guy that I was arguing with as well before I was arguing with you, or is that another person?
I forget the guy's name. Like the thing with comments right now is that like because either like weird back and forth arguments happen or they overpopulate, I don't look at them as much anymore because now I'm getting enough to where I get inundated with them. So I'll go through and check them, but I don't have time to respond to everything now, which is cool. Like I like that for channel growth, quote unquote, but like I'm not big on YouTube. I'm a dude in his bedroom making videos. Like so
I'm a dude on my hashtag casting couch, so
yeah, like there you go. So it's just like, I don't initially I would try to respond to just about every comment, and then over time it would be like I'll read it, and if it doesn't need a response, I won't respond. And then sometimes like, oh, if there's something I can poke a little fun at or just add a little insight, I'll respond. And then now it's just like, yeah, it's really difficult to keep up. So because there's a lot of good shit that goes on in the comment section sometimes, and sometimes they're just cancer.
Here's an interesting divergence in opinion you and I had. going back, and I'm not trying to like start a debate on this per se, because I know you'll probably roll.
I mean, debate away. You guys can call me, retarded or an idiot or whatever. That's fine.
That's not debate.
I can take it.
That's not debate. But
I can take the internet debate. I mean, it's just a flame war, but yeah, I mean, I can take that too.
But
you've made it to 2021, then you're used to it.
Survive everything, yeah.
Right. So a while ago, I did my video on the hashtag shall not comply crowd, and you took issue, and you had valid points to that. One of them was, why would they go out there and actively break the law? And I'm not trying to advocate, and I hope I was able to stress that in that video, is I'm not advocating for people to necessarily do it unless they want to do it. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do this. If you do it, that's on you. But you said, why would they go out there and actively break the law and then later get tracked down? Well, my kind of issue with that, my thought on that was, they're already displaying a shall not comply sign, right? We know that our government is spying on us with facial recognition, etc. If they wanted to track you down, they could.
Oh, they will, yeah. No, like, that's the thing, right? Is if you're talking about like the asymmetrical side of things, the advantage that the population would have in, let's imagine a hypothetical insurrection against the government, right? So like the advantage the general population has is camouflage and that they're everywhere. So like, why would you ever show your hand? You know what I mean? So why would you have a shall not comply sticker? Why would you have, a lot of this stuff? You'd probably want stealthier symbols than that, and you'd probably want to proliferate information differently.
Yeah, and you probably want to be gray, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
my car has no bumper stickers on it.
Oh, I have liberal bumper stickers.
Mine has not. The only time I ever thought about putting any sort of message on my car was during the Breonna Taylor incident. That was the only time.
No more silence in gun violence.
What?
Yeah, see, that's the ultimate camouflage right there. So
that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, so like, and no one here is opposed to ending gun violence. Like, I don't think anyone here is advocating for like we want a bloodier, Wild West America. I don't think anyone's saying that.
But
so
Walt, we could go be Wyatt Earp than Doc Holliday.
Okay, that's the California conspiracy, the Yeehaw conspiracy. You're only allowed to own like single action revolvers and lever action guns, and
yeah, they think the handgun roster pretty much means any semi-auto.
Yeah, like, I mean, eventually that's just what it devolves into. It just devolves into making California Wild West again.
That's the idea behind it.
And there's like one person with an AR, and everyone's looking at it after society's reverted back to a primitive state and go full monkey again. And they're like, oh, how do I make that? That's
how do I make like multi-thunder thing.
Yeah, like, I mean, but that's, yeah, like when we talk about non-compliance, so that is my angle. Like, realistically, if you went to the range with a gun that was non-compliant in my state, like, probably nothing's going to happen to you. Realistically, 99% of the time, probably nothing's going to happen to you. That is also not legal advice. The issue of people not catching you or not caring is different than, can they do it to you? And the answer is, yeah, they could. Like, if you have a FUD at the range that really wants to ruin your day, or if you have someone that knows your name and rough location and they want to red flag you, or whatever, they could do that. And then you're up Shit's Creek without a paddle at that point. So, like,
do y'all have ERPOs in California?
Are the GRVOs? Are the GVROs or whatever? Or the gun violence restraining orders or whatever?
The red flag.
Yeah. Yeah, we do in California. We do. And they have a squad that goes around and do them. So basically, like, how that works, I think Reno posted a video on it. And I forget the source video. I think it was actually the state of California. But basically, it's a squad of like 6 cops or so, and they just roll up at your door. And then they go check all the addresses where you might have had stuff in the past or whatever, and they bring search warrants and whatever, and it's a whole mess.
I think a good example of how non-compliance can work is the weed smokers.
Yeah.
They weren't going out and blowing weed in cops' faces, smoking and all that. They were just staying at home, doing what they want. And a few of them, of course, get busted, but eventually people and the system realize that it's unjust, and things start to change. Maybe not on a federal level, but certain states, it started with medical marijuana, and now states are going full recreational.
Hell, didn't the House pass something on that?
I think they were looking at it. I don't know what's happened.
Yeah. I know there was something in the works, but the news stopped.
Oh yeah, because the
Capitol Hill riots
got big.
On quotations. I also find it funny that it was Capitol Hill riots, but everything else, all the Black, Lives Matter and all the other stuff was those were peaceful protests.
Oh, they were peaceful protests, but to play devil's advocate for the other side, the issue was that comes up in a lot of the left circles that I listen to, and they have a fair point. The Black Lives Matter protesters were surrounded by National Guard troops, basically staring them down, and of course former President Trump, acting like a tough man while making the National Guard force away the protesters. But when you had the MAGA rally out there, where were the National Guard? And that's not necessarily a stab at the left or the right. That's a stab where it belongs to be stabbed.
Yeah.
Is the politicians who control the security. So if anyone wants to call racism.
I actually, and I do have a couple thoughts to develop, because I did characterize it as a coup, and specifically, to be more clear, I do think it's an attempted coup. And I know that that definition we can go back and forth on. That's the less relevant.
Clears you because
yeah,
as long as you're not making it an absolute
yeah, like it obviously wasn't successful. Like so
murder is still attempted murder.
Yeah, like people still died. There was still a bunch of property damage. There was still a bunch of stuff that we don't care for. But that aside, like what I would tell people is, like, one, like, could you imagine if anti-fascist protesters did that? Like if Antifa protesters did that? What the reaction would have been from the media in 2016, because like they were calling Trump supporters anarchists, which is absolute insanity. Like they were taking down the American flag and putting up a Trump flag. Like they are that hard on for their particular authoritarian, and you're going to call them an anarchist? Like, are you kidding me? But factor in, they were let in through certain doors. I think some barricades got pushed in, taken down. Other ones, they just got let through. There were definitely at least like maybe one or two instigators in the crowd, or agitators in the crowd, that might not have shared the ideology, but they were just there to start shit, from what I can tell. Also, a very convenient lack of security in certain areas, which allows for this thing to go on. And further, social media that specifically blocks messages when Trump was trying to tell the crowd to calm down. So,
I wasn't aware of that one.
If they block that, then they should be equally held, for inciting it.
Yeah, I mean, principles and negative responsibility, like ethically, I'm not going to pretend like I don't hold Facebook and Twitter accountable for that type of stuff, because that's ridiculous. And I made a video about that too, actually, not about that specifically, but about like disenfranchising Trump supporters off of social media. Because if you're that radicalized for a candidate to the point where you're basically at the point where you're like, okay, I will embrace fascism now if it gets me Trump, if it gets me a political victory. If you're at that point, I probably want you talking to normal people every day. I probably want you talking to people that disagree with you on things, where you can have normal conversations and be exposed to other types of content. So in my view, because obviously I'm against re-education camps, I am against any other form of forced ideological adoption from like that the government would push onto individuals. Because I'm against all that stuff. I'm like, let me do it in the marketplace of ideas. Let me do it where these people go to interact, instead of telling them to screw off to dark corners of the internet where they get radicalized more and commit more to crazy stuff. I would rather talk to them here.
I think that's why the major corporations do that, though, because they know that if they radicalize people, they can just make more profit off the divide. It's all a system that feeds off itself.
Yeah, and I think there's enough benefit there, like to where it happened to benefit the blue team a lot with the narrative. You know what I mean? Like, happened to benefit them a lot. Happened to give some people on the red team a cop out. But overall, it's.
Well, you see now that the right is turning against itself, against the QAnon narrative. They've got that one lady. I just found out about this today. Was the Senator Green or whatever, or Representative Green, that they're basically trying to either get to stop being as crazy with her narrative, or they're trying to kick her out.
Yeah, and
I'm pretty sure Q is a Russian
It is.
espionage program or whatever.
It is, and then it got adopted by certain people in power that, in our politics, that were like, hey,
Got turned into a meme.
well, not a good one. Not a good one
Yeah.
for the people. Unlike
Well, that's
Interesting.
because the Russians,
Trust the plan.
the Russians are actually, I mean, they're fantastic with propaganda. Like everyone who is freaking out over election meddling, either in 2020 or in 2016 or whatever, it's like, you guys know that, like, one, we do this too, which I'm against, but we do this too in other countries.
Yeah.
And
You
like,
guys ever
two,
read,
everybody doesn't
Confessions of
hear.
an Economic Hitman?
Yeah, right.
If you haven't read that book, it's pretty eye-opening to all the great things that our country does overseas, and all their benevolent reasons for doing so.
Oh, you mean like our banana republics in South America?
Yeah, and the Pakistani gender studies or whatever.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ridiculous stuff that we do and that others do. And that's like, but that's the point, right? Is that I think Joe Blow American, whether they lean left or lean right, generally they're against most of that like bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like, if I had to say like who I reach out to, it's like I'm trying to find those people that are like-minded. Because like if I can flip a couple people over to that issue, and we, you know, eventually that flips a couple more people and a couple more people, and there's a thought change, that's powerful. But I guess, oh, gosh, can I segue?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about Allan, like your beef with gun websites or G-Webs, and
Oh yeah,
the history over there, and then like what's going on? I'm not going to try to be a gun websites apologist. Like he and I are friends, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Like I support that he does 2A stuff, and I support the amount of devotion and what he's done for it. A lot of the people that he's networked with and a lot of the stuff that he's done, like it's good stuff. But I don't agree with everything that he says. So I don't feel the need to apologize for that. But I think like giving you some time to clear the air on that might be good.
yeah. I actually originally had no problem with it. I was just making some, crass, comments, in a section, and he completely went on like a tirade against me. And since then, I tried to kind of give him some space, and then I came back and he kept banning me, and of course that got me riled up, so I was like, okay.
So if you were to sit down and talk with G-Webs, would you be able to?
I can't, because I've tried, I tried coming at him diplomatically, like, look dude, this is what's actually going on in the comments, but he's just instant delete. Like, I've got a couple screen recordings where like I'm being totally cool, actually being beneficial to the chat and interacting, and you get banned. So it's like almost spite or something. I don't know.
So I think like I think, and this is just based on my comments with him, like in my conversations with him, because he's old YouTube, right? Like he has been around, and then he stopped for a while, and then kind of ramped back up a bit later. And of course, like when you take a break on YouTube, that does things to your channel, right? It can kill reach and things like that, right? But
I only had like 250K, but only like 4 people.
Right.
watch.
Like basically like YouTube's algorithm goes, screw you, you weren't consistent, and hangs you out to dry. Right. And so you got to be like super consistent. And he took a break for a bit because of some stuff that happened. But I know that he comes from that old perspective where he's dealt with the critical comments or like troll comments before. I mean, you've advertised yourself as the greatest troll who's ever lived. I don't think you have an issue with that label. Like, I mean, I did psychological operations. I learned, when I learned trolling, it was back in like 4chan and like anime fan forums back in the day. So I don't mind. Like, I take it with the sense of, like humor and whatever, when I go back and forth on stuff. And I don't, it's the internet. Like, don't take it personal. Like, people are gonna fucking disagree with you and think that, you're fucking Satan sometimes, and they're gonna think that you're an angel other times. But yeah, I think because he has that mindset. I think that's what's going on on his end. So he's just like, oh, it's a troll comment, whatever, and then maybe he'll go like, oh, okay, yeah, this is just like, some stupid troll or whatever, so I'll label him as something. Like, I asked, I'm like, I don't think he's a Bloomberg plant.
Yeah.
There was a time where I thought you were like an Owen Benjamin fan for a second, and then I had to actually go to your channel and see like other videos that you put out and like how you've gone after him, and then hear your story on that more, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's not true. I got that wrong about Allan. I have no problem saying that.
Yeah, that's actually how I got the greatest troll to ever live, because I was, it's not like I'm great at trolling, but I'm the greatest of the trolls. I'm actually doing it for a good reason. I want to expose the grifters. I don't want to gain clout and build my channel off it. That's why I only have like 1,000 subs, and I always say stuff that could severely hinder my growth.
Well, shit, 1,000 subs. I think of the three of us, you're the biggest channel.
He is, yeah.
Even combined. Even combined.
I do have my Videolytics. I think I've pulled like a few more views this month, but like depending on basically if I luck out with the algorithm on an upload or not. Like, if we look at monthly views, so like your content I think keeps getting kind of like consistent views, it seems like, whether or not you upload. So you have a benefit over mine that I don't have, which is I go I'm like GME right now. I'll spike up and I'll go back down, and then I'll spike up a little bit, and I'm trying to ride a dragon that feels like it's way in my past. That's how it feels for me making content right now.
Mine spiked and just stayed the course.
Yeah.
My metric I go by is I just want smart people making thought out comments, and having good discussions.
That's 100% why I do what I do. Like, I want to have people do that. The comments that actually drive me crazy, like, I appreciate supporting and positive comments, because like sometimes there's different types of criticism you take online, right? So like there's the troll criticism, which can be like, okay, whatever, this guy's just being an asshole or making a joke or whatever, and I ignore that. And then there's other times where someone can be critical of you in a way that you internalize, right? And you can think about, and it's good. Yeah, like, and there's times where I've had that, like, actually Wheeled and Well Armed was one where he's like, oh, well, this should have been a playlist and this, and I was like, God damn it, like, I don't want to respond to this right now. And I took it as though it was a troll comment at first, because it's like, you put so much time and effort in trying to get a video right. And like, for me, most of the time I'm shooting from the hip, or I have a very small list of bullet points I'm going over. Most of the time I'm not scripted. So errors in my presentation and things like that are kind of natural when they happen. And so when he points out that there was a better way for it to be presented, he's 1,000% right. But I take it like it's some like, fucking troll comment for a second. I'm like, oh, fuck this guy. And it's like, no, actually, no, he's a good guy. He supports you. He cares about what you're doing. He's just giving you honest feedback. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm an idiot, but like, that's one of those things though, right? I think like checking the emotions at the door is something we all have to do sometimes. Like, and I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect. Like, I try not to be, I think everybody generally tries not to be a hypocrite, but there's always going to be things that we fuck up or change our minds on. It's like, that's okay. Like, I don't have an issue with that.
Now that I was reminded of it, Gun Websites was one of the people that, took offense when I was trying to give him information about what's actually going on and how the pistol bracelet was a guidance, etc. But, at the time he was hooked on the narrative, we need to write our reps. This is going to make us win. They're trying to take our guns, etc.
Yeah, and then when I will say, when I said it, he was open to when I said, hey, look, like, it's not over. We shouldn't be celebrating. This is what's actually going on. When I made the correction, he was fine to share that, but it's like, it's one of those things where, like, if someone else says it that you've talked to and established rapport with, sometimes it is just flat out easier to take that information from that person than someone else who you get off on the wrong foot with for whatever reason. Yeah. And that's frustrating to be on the other end of that. Like, I get that. Exactly.
I have to recognize that the comment I wrote that triggered him or set him off absolutely was abrasive, but it wasn't meant to be, like that, Like, I was just, trying to make a quip, but like, these tyrants really don't care. They see them as letters at the same time. Especially with this going on right now. They weren't looking for those kind of...
They are abrasive as shit.
Yeah. They can. Sometimes I do, make really good coherent points, but most of it is abrasive.
Yeah, like I mean, the one takeaway that I would want from this conversation, because we could go back and forth on a lot of different, I know, like political disagreements, or which to me right now feel like just miscommunication between, I drop a video, I think you read something into it that maybe I didn't mean something as, and then you leave a comment, and then I read something into that you didn't mean it as. I feel like that's 99% of our shit here. And then the other 1% might be like, okay, yeah, we could go back and forth on like, moderator functions and which comments and which things are, like whatever in different platforms, Discord, whatever. I did talk to the moderator that kicked you, and you weren't supposed to be kicked, and perfect whatever. I'm like, no, if there's a brigading incident that's like highly probable, and like we're like, okay, when on my end, so this is what I was looking at with that, by the way. I was looking at more dislikes than views out of nowhere on a video that wound up getting way more likes. And I'm going like, how would this be possible? The first comment's Allan. And then suddenly all of these dislikes just disappeared after like 24 hours. They disappeared. Like I went down to 3 on that video, and I started with like 6.
Last I checked, it was 6.
So yeah, so on my end, like I'll go check it right now. Give me just a second.
The only person that I've kind of mass thumbs down is gun websites, and that was when I was going through different accounts. For every account that he banned when I shouldn't have been banned, dislike.
Yeah, so I fluctuated. It showed me 3 dislikes, and now it's showing me like 33 likes and 6 dislikes again. So that number fluctuated. It was funny though, and this is one thing I can attest, honest, like fucking hand to God. Right hand to God, like the guy that said he unsubbed off of that video, no one had unsubbed off of that video. So you know what I mean? So,
I do that to Johnny B all the time. I'm unsubscribing. You offended me.
God, like I can't watch Johnny B without getting tilted right now, so I don't. I called him out, and he said LOL. So so it's like, okay, well, you watched.
I think the B stands for businessman.
Yeah, no, he's a communications professor at GunTubes, I think part-time, but he's also very run-of-the-mill Leviathan grouper, which isn't inherently wrong. Like, I don't know if I think I saw you in the Tundra Tactical server. Like, I like Tundra Tactical a lot. I think they're really funny. Like, it's silly cracked.com content. I really like that. But
yeah, that's one of the few places where I can make jokes and people understand that I'm just busting balls.
Yeah, because that's all they do on that server. Like, if you jump in on a voice chat, you got people like drunk off their mind, fucking like shirtless and shit, like doing stupid shit, and like their voice chats are hella fun to go like chaperone, on their server, But yeah, like there's that, and then there's the other side of it, which is like you have Johnny B's out there who, like on my end, like. I'm put in a position where I have to be against Johnny B because like he said that he doesn't want money he doesn't want anyone who's liberal and pro-gun. So basically like, hey, Walt, specifically you, do not donate to FBC. We don't want your money. Do not donate to GOA. We don't want your money. Do not donate to like whatever causes. Don't participate. You're not with us. And it's like, do you understand how hard I'm trying to fight that specifically because of my goal to flip these fucking Democrats and get them to be pro-gun, like in Congress? I'm not talking about the Democratic voters. I'm talking about Congress. That's the end state for me. That's the big plan. If I can get one, that would be great. If I can get more than that, that'd be great. But like how much harder I have to work when you make it an us versus them, because all that does is make them want to go vote Biden against their interests and then complain about it after the fact, which is dumb. And I've talked to them about that, but, and that is an anti-2A vote. I'm not trying to pretend that it's not, but those people themselves, like people will vote in stupid ways in our eyes because we view an issue one way, but in their mind, it's rational because of where they're at and what their interests are. And so like how they prioritize 2A is radically different than how you and I prioritize it, So like, yeah. That's the obstacle we have to overcome. I have actual survey data on that I've gathered. And that's the major obstacle, is just getting them to see it as important as we do, but then also getting our side. If we're like single issue voters, then it's like, okay, well, can we meet in the middle on civil liberties and figure out the rest? Like, I get that some of you don't want universal health care or whatever, but like, a lot of the reforms that they want to get us towards that are things like making that would wind up making medications cheaper, even if we didn't do it, like deregulating certain things, allowing the government to negotiate for medications, things like that. And it's like, I get that not everyone's down for everything Medicare for all, but there are aspects of the plan that that are salvageable, even if you're on the right, that just force government to be smarter and stick it to businesses that run monopolies. Like deregulating a lot of medical stuff would be probably good in my mind.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, is because a lot of the costs of the medical industry is because so many people suing, and then there's regulations for hiring doctors where they got to pay $10,000 just to get them in the door, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and the government blocks in a lot of places. The government blocks new hospitals, new medical treatment facilities, new doctors' offices from going up. In a lot of places, the government can't negotiate for the cost of medications. So like the benefit, what I think actually is going on with Medicare for all, why it gets quote unquote cheaper at the end of the day by a lot of estimates, is because the entire system is getting deregulated and replaced with one central system. So the deregulation aspect is what makes Medicare for all cheaper in my mind. I would love it if an Army medic could go, after they pass their MOSQ, they can stitch someone up. I would love it if we could have a stitch shop on the corner. You work a construction job, you get a scrape, or you're on a hike and you bust open your leg on, falling on like a stick or a rock or something. You go drive to a stitch shop.
Repair company.
Right. They literally, they just, you drive to them, they patch you up. If you're infected, they tell you to go to the hospital. They give you a little antibiotics and stuff, and you're on your merry way.
Have any of you played Fallout 3?
I was thinking fleet vehicles. They just drive to you,
Yeah, modernize it, right? Delivery.
Have any of y'all played Fallout 3?
No.
I have. It's been a while.
Okay, do you remember the doctor in the first, what was it, the town with the Atom? I think it was the town.
Yeah.
Remember that
Megaton or whatever? Yeah,
the doctor that was there.
That has the bomb in the middle of it, like the atomic bomb in the middle of the town.
Do you remember the doctor? Like, he was basically like this old crass dude, but he was like, he'll fix you up, but he's gonna give you shit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need doctors like that. Like, hey, dumbass, don't break your leg again.
Yeah, no, like my doctors and everything. I try to find doctors that I can just have like a human relationship with, and where I feel like they're not telling me things to be politically correct or overly sensitive. Like, I want doctors that will say I'm fucking crazy, or like, like,
you're dying.
you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever. Or, this is a big deal and you need to fix it right now. Like, I want doctors that are just going to tell it to me straight, as much as possible. And I get why some doctors don't, because they deal with a lot of crazy people all the time. But, but yeah, no, like, but in all seriousness, yeah, like, there's a lot of policy when we get down into policy details where it's like, oh shit, that's not what is actually meant, because people don't research it, right? Like, it's like, that's what we see with the Second Amendment. That's the sin that happens, is people don't understand firearms and what these statistics mean, and they haven't dug into it. Because when you dig into it deeply, you're pro-gun. When you dig into the statistics at a surface level, that's when you find your antis a lot of the time, right? So like, like it's a matter of, like, for me, working across. But yeah, if I have one goal for this conversation, Allan, it would just be that you don't think I'm being intentionally dishonest ever. That would be my objective.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we have any more points to bring up?
I think
that objective was completed.
Yeah. Cool.
One of the things I want to draw back to, because I just thought of this, better, the way I can phrase it is, the liberals, that are, just looking to have get empathy from you, or me, etc., or anyone from life, they're not ready for change, But the people who actually want to solve the problems, those are the types that I'm all for going, going the extra mile to, trying to lead them to a place where they can start to rationalize, and, the next time around, they don't need, someone to point out the facts for them. They know how to find them themselves.
That's fair. Yeah. And I think like this is actually a conversation I've had on r/liberal gun owners, where I was talking about why I'm radically pro-gun. And then I had, basically it was a neoliberal in there who wound up saying, hey, look, like, I get that you're radically pro 2A and everything, but I like guns too. And I don't want to be, not included, whatever. And I'm like, you don't have to validate yourself to me. You have your opinions. I have mine. My thing is that, yeah, I think my stance is right. I think I'm correct on the issue. I think I have a lot of evidence and arguments to back up my position, you know. And I think that if you and I talked, you would probably come around to saying things my way. With that being said, you're still a gun owner. Yeah, you happen to be liberal. You happen to support some things like background checks and things like that, yeah, I do disagree with. But you probably agree with me on things like featureless laws. You probably agree with me on things like high capacity magazines, quote unquote, right? So like, if we talk about these issues, the overwhelming issues that annoyed me enough to be radicalized, to be pro-gun, and pro-2A, we're probably in agreement on those being ridiculous, and we can probably agree on taking some actions here. So even if you're only going to come with me 50% of the way, I'll take you that 50%. I will take all the help I can get. Yeah. Again, I won't compromise, but I will absolutely work with whoever I can work with to get that objective done, so long as it's not going to be counterproductive long run. So that's the nuance with it. But yeah, I don't want to ever be like coming off like we should ever bend a knee to a neoliberal establishment, or like a neoconservative establishment even. Like, I don't think that we need to bend a knee to any authoritarians. I think that we can just be the population and eventually win this. And I think it's possible for us to do it through our own processes too. So,
Allan, I want to say also that, you know, just because somebody wants to live in blissful ignorance doesn't necessarily mean that it's only going to be on one political side. So that's why I also had a problem with you saying just liberals in general, because that is how it came across, is just liberals in general. But the truth is, those people exist in every circle. So if we shouldn't use the rhetoric of liberal, like I said. We should just say blissfully ignorant people at worst.
Yeah, I'd say it's a psychological thing. I'm not sure if you guys saw my video on the spirit of regression. But essentially, I think that the liberals, you know, like the ones that are the liberal elite, I should say, or the leftists, they're making people cling to the spirit of regression, you know, which is wanting for security, not liberty. And
you could make that argument for the right, though, with the back to blue.
Well, that would still be the same. Like, so actually, if we want to really just synthesize terms, I think, Allan, when you use the term leftist, what you're really referring to in like the political science sense is almost that liberal elite. Like, it seems like when you say leftist, it's like there's an equivocation there. And it's the only note that I draw is that that's different from, say, like on the Discord server, we've got like Maximilian, who is, you know, a very anti-authoritarian communist, hard communist, very much a leftist, literally Marxist theorist, you know, like as left as you can get, pretty much. And even he, you know, like if you talk to him, like you'll be like, yeah, you know, if we were to replace the world with like every government and economic structure with communism, the entire world would collapse right now. Like, he'll say that. He's like, yeah, it's not like there, you know, we have to be ready to make that trade, and we have to be ready. Like even he is practical about it, you know, but he's also not the enemy. Like, he'll come out and be like, yeah, under no pretext shall the working class be disarmed. I'm like, yeah, I'll work with that. Like, if you go far enough left, there's a point where you actually do get your gun rights back, which is fascinating, right? It's just that like neoliberal sliver that's just so anti-gun because they need to keep that population down. They need to win elections.
Yeah, as long as there's some semblance of, you know, them wanting to be independent, and, you know, like that's the core thing. As long as people are independent, you know, striving for that, then I don't really have a problem. It's the, you know, it's the authoritarians essentially that.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, like, no, I'm with you. Yeah, so if I think we're all anti-authoritarian, and I think, yeah, to that point, yeah, like the liberal elite is a big problem. That liberal elite can include a lot of people that are GOP as well, in a sense. So I think like that language makes it, I think, more clear if you use that, what you mean, because when you blanket leftist, it can just include these other people that I don't think you're trying to refer to.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people that are, you know, they have liberal ideas, you know, and leanings, but they call themselves leftists. So when I say that, you're thinking, oh, you're speaking about me, but like, no, not quite.
Right. So yeah, no, I'm cool. I think this cleared the air for me on my end. So I'm cool. I mean, there like definitely like there's some comments that have been made in the past that like I'm not super like privy on. or I'm not super like excited or stoked about, like where I'd be like disagree and be like, why did you say this? And like, you know, are you just trying to get a rise? But I think like to that extent, like if it's something like anything like said about G-Webs or said to G-Webs, I think you're trying to get a rise after the initial thing, and then you try to reconcile. Like, I don't think you've been dishonest with me about that. So
yeah.
So
I really don't try to go, you know, operate with hate or contempt. Like, I do my best to stay away from that kind of stuff, but I'm human and I get into it. But you know, I'm always like, if I could go to gun websites, you know, thing and just chat and, you know, take part, he'd probably end up liking me because we probably agree on a lot more than we disagree on.
That's what I'm like. That's what I'm hearing too. And like the other thing is like at the end of the day, you know, internet comments are internet comments too. Like, yeah, I'm like, if you see me on Facebook, I'm absolutely like shit posting all over the place on Facebook because that's where I do it. You know, so
I can't do that anymore. I've got too many people constantly. They've got my RSS feed to my Facebook just waiting for me to post something controversial so they can flag it.
I feel that. But yeah, one other question, I guess, if we're about to wrap up. But one other question: who the hell was Mersh?
Oh my God. Okay, so Mersh is he's a Long Island, Florida man who has zero self-awareness and is teetering on narcissism. I don't hate the guy, but I just think it's hilarious because he, you know, the lack of self-awareness, and he thinks he's like a market expert and interior home designer, all these things. And, you know, it's just hilarious watching him brag about stuff and pretend that he's, you know, hot shit.
I was gonna say because like I saw a couple videos on your channel, and then I saw the Owen Benjamin stuff, and I remember watching Owen Benjamin on Crowder and being like, he can be funny sometimes. And I remember checking out some of his sketch comedy, being like, yeah, okay, this is cool. And then I remember and I'm like, yeah, it's politically incorrect, whatever. And then I remember I started watching some of his live streams, and then everything became like a Jewish conspiracy. I'm like, yeah, I'm out.
It gets a lot worse than that. He was burning his own children's books. He was encouraging his followers to drink turpentine to kill worms in their stomach to make them healthier. Yeah. Owen Benjamin is I could go on for that because
No, he's a piece of work. He needs help. Yeah, it's like, honestly,
it's 100% a cult. People have, you know, left it and be like, yeah, I was in a cult.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like the conversations offhand. I remember like seeing those and being like, it seems like you and your wife are not on the same page with what you're doing right now. It seems like she wants you to stop. Like,
yeah, but everything's great.
Yeah, everything's fine. Like, even though I don't have money anymore, and even though I don't have like, and it's like everything's fine. Everything's fine, guys.
Everything's fine.
Yeah. She's like, we're crushing. No one's having a better time than us right now.
Yeah, as like, I moved 17 times and. Yeah.
Well,
like I feel it.
I think this has been a really productive chat. I want to go ahead and take credit that I am building bridges by firing shots. So.
I mean,
okay, I'll take some of that credit too, then.
Yeah, no, yeah, Allan, and for the record, whenever I say I want people on to debate, whether or not it turns into yelling or if it's just a productive conversation, this was always my end goal, was to be able to just be like, let's just air the shit and then like talk about it and then understand more. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but like when we understand where the other person's coming from, you know what I mean? So like, I like having these types of conversations because I feel like they eliminate a lot of like issues with understanding between different mediums that can happen. So thank you for doing this, doing a round two. I appreciate that.
Totally. I'm up for this anytime. It's a good thought experiments and thought-provoking conversations.
Yeah, well, you referred to this more as a debate. I always see it more as just a discussion, you know, just a talk.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know.
We did technically get into the realm of debate on a few of the subjects.
Yeah, when I say debate, I'm very much in like philosophy major land where I'm thinking like dialectics. So the idea is to listen to the other person and then try to come to a better understanding of reality together. So like really when I say debate, I generally mean discussion. I know when you say debate though in this world, it kind of means let's yell at each other on the internet, which is not what I mean it as typically. But I am open to that.
Yeah. When I think of debate, like there's going to be a moderator there making sure no one goes off the rails and starts, you know, dipping into fallacies and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do that. We've got moderated debates coming up on our Discord here, but I won't take too much time to self promo, guys. If you are coming from the Proving Grounds Discord, you better subscribe to Cobalt right now, or I'll find you. That's a joke. I won't actually find you, unless I already have.
Well, I appreciate.
And of course,
I appreciate the nudge there, Walt.
And go check out Allan Powell's content because he's a little funny. Little like silly, lighthearted content sometimes. Also, show some weird shit that YouTubers do.
Yeah, if you're interested in any things that I talked about, like as far as the Owen or Murr stuff, there's a catalog of stuff that'll completely fill you in all the craziness.
All right, well, I think it's time for everyone to bid each other good night. So, Walt, Allan, good night. Good to have you on. Hope to have you on in the future. Maybe on my own little shoot the re thing. We'll see.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
All right.
Totally. Later.
Bye.
All right.